has a low battery, so we can get out there in real time and fix them.
Now, in addition to the new park and pay meters, the hours of operation have also changed. What can we expect? And again, will these changes be the same everywhere throughout the city?
Yes, and again, as part of that budget discussion and the direction that we received from City Council and the Mayor's office, along with the ordinance change for the rates, the hours were also changed, and the main purpose of that was to better use the curb space and utilize and create turnover. Many of our businesses that are open later in the evening and work the same on Saturday and Sundays, and they need the same turnover for those spaces. So majority of the city will be extended from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. It's a 2-hour window. In some locations throughout the city, small locations where there's entertainment districts, there is shopping, there's dining, there is restaurants or activity that goes beyond 8 p.m. In those areas, the meters will run till midnight on Friday and Saturday. And again, some of those locations will also have Sunday hours of 11 a.m. to 8 p.m.
And when can we expect the complete change-out of metering to be completed?
Well, the change-out of the pay stations, again, which is a small change-out, that's about 100% complete. The meter rates, changing the rates, that has also about 95% complete. So the last step in this program is now really changing the hours, and the department anticipates completing that task by end of February.
Now, I understand you maintain a very comprehensive website, so should one of our viewers come across a malfunction, how can they report that, or what should they do?
Well, yes, and let me say the website for the viewers. It's www.ladot.lacity.org. There's a lot of information on frequently asked questions. There's information about the rates and hours on our website. But as far as broken meters, or if they come across a meter that it's not operating correctly, there's an 800 number, and let me read that. It's 1-877-215-3958. And we have operators, we have people ready to take those calls and for us to go out and fix those meters. But as I mentioned, I think the future holds that we get notified automatically through technology so that we can get there and fix those meters much faster.
Department of Transportation Assistant Manager Amir Sadati, thank you so much for joining us on Council Week in Review.
Thank you, Rasha, for having me.
Again, the City Council voted to receive and file the Transportation Committee report and approved amendments that will provide a report on the impact of the higher meter fees and additional meter hours. If you have any suggestions or comments about any of the programs you see on Channel 35 or would like to receive a free viewer guide, call our viewer hotline at 213-473-3978. We invite you to address the Los Angeles City Council on any item on the council agenda, as well as during public comment. You may come downtown to City Hall or go to the Van Nuys City Hall and participate via video teleconferencing. Remember, you can watch all Los Angeles City Council meetings live in their entirety on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, beginning at 10 a.m. On Sundays, you can watch the replay of all the week's meetings beginning at 10 a.m. Council Week in Review can be seen Monday through Friday at 9:30 a.m. and 6:30 p.m. and on Sunday at 9:30 a.m. That concludes our program for the week ending January 9th, 2009. On behalf of Jack Popejoy and everyone here at Channel 35, I'm Rasha Goel. Thank you for watching, and please join us for the next Council Week in Review.
What is a red flag day? That's a day when you don't park your car if you see one of these, so emergency vehicles can get through. How do you know when it is? TV News will tell you, or the Los Angeles Fire Department can contact you via email or phone. Sign up at www.lafd.org/redflag. Remember, you see this? Don't park. Sign up for email and phone alerts, and that's a red flag day.
G'day, Troy McCubbin from North Hollywood. You're watching LA City View, Channel 35, our city, our channel.
Tony Cardenas.
Good morning, Los Angeles, and welcome to the City Council meeting for January 13th, 2009. I want to thank the council members who are here pursuant to council rules on time. Council members Alarcon, Gruel, Labange, Perry, Rosendahl, Smith, and Zine. We are awaiting two more council members to constitute a quorum. Mr. Huizar is excused today, as is Mr. Wesson. We thus are waiting for Mr. Cardenas, Ms. Hahn, Mr. Parks, Mr. Reyes, and Mr. Weiss, who I believe actually are in the chambers, just in the press room right now. So if we could confirm that, we may be able to begin the meeting right away. In the meantime, we want to welcome our members of the public that are here, as well as our viewers on Channel 35. Channel 35 broadcasts us throughout the city's cable system, each meeting on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 10 a.m., and rebroadcasts in the evening. We're also available online through webcast at the city's homepage, lacity.org, where there's a wealth of information and contact information for city services to improve the quality of your life here in Los Angeles. Also on our city's homepage, we have archived footage of our past council meetings, podcasts, and links to other useful services. You can always use your telephone, finally, by calling 213-621-CITY to listen into the council meetings. Again, that's 213-621-CITY. And not just our council meetings, but our committee meetings are simulcast through that telephone service. Anybody who would wish to be heard today on any of the items that have been agendized for public hearings can fill out a speaker card in the back and hand that to one of the sergeants at arms. We'll make sure to get your comments into the mix. And there's a part of the meeting for general public comment in which people who have items to say on items that are, or things to say on items that are not on our agenda, but nevertheless under our jurisdiction, can be heard. Again, fill out a speaker card and just hand that to one of the sergeants at arms. We'll make sure to put that in the mix. With that, I want to call again Council Members Cardenas, Hahn, Parks, Reyes, and Weiss to join us. If we could ask Sergeant at Arms to see if they're in the press room. I believe that we will be beginning the meeting shortly. Thank you all for your patience, and we should begin in about 1 minute. Thank you, Mr. Reyes. We're still awaiting Mr. Weiss, Mr. Cardenas, and Ms. Hahn, and Mr. Parks. All right, if we can please call the roll.
Alarcon, Cardenas, Gruel, Hahn, Weasel, Labange, Parks, Perry, Reyes, Rosendahl, Smith, Weiss, Weston, Zine, Garcetti. 10 members present and a quorum, Mr. President.
First order of business, please.
Approval of the minutes.
All right, Mr. Smith moves, Mr. Weiss seconds. Without objection, those will be approved. Next order of business.
Commendatory resolutions for approval.
With a very hoarse voice, Ms. Gruel moves and Mr. Levant seconds. Without objection, those will be approved as well. Next order of business, please.
Mr. President, this is Tuesday, and there's a flag salute.
If I can ask everybody in council chambers to please rise, and Mr. Reyes, if you'll lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
Thank you, Council President. It'll be my honor. Please rise, put your right hand over your heart. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Reyes. If we can run through the agenda.
On the regular agenda, items 1 through 6 are building and safety liens notice for public hearing.
All right.
The department reports that item 1 may be received and filed inasmuch as it has been paid, and that items 2 through 6 be continued to April 1st so the department can provide appropriate notification.
Okay, if there's no objection, we'll go ahead and move to receive and file 1 and continue the other items till the 1st. Next items, please.
Items 7 through 19 are items for which public hearings have been held, and there is a request to refer item 17 to the Ad hoc Gang Committee.
Okay, is there any objection to referring 17 to the Ad hoc Gang Committee? Seeing none, we'll move that. Other specials, colleagues? Other specials, we're on 7 through 19. Okay, 10 and 11, Mr. Smith? Any other specials, colleagues? We have 10, 11, and just 10 and 11 called special. There are no others. Please open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
10 ayes.
Those are approved. Next items, please.
Items 20 through 33 are items for which public hearings have not been held. 10 votes are required for consideration.
Okay, we have a card on item 28. We'll call that special for a card from the public. And yes, Ms. Perry? 33 from Ms. Perry. And do we have any other cards? Okay, we'll call 24 special as well to link to 10 and 11. And okay, here, stack up. Okay, we have 10, 11. We have a card on item 20, item 22, item 23, 24, 28. So we'll call those special for cards from the public. If we can please take up the balance, open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
11 ayes.
Those are approved. Next order of business, please.
On the supplemental agenda, items 34 and 35 are items for which public hearings have not been held. 10 votes are required for consideration.
Okay, we have cards on 34 and 35, and Mr. Labange on 35 as well.
Thank you. Sorry.
Okay. All right, that'll take us to general public comment. And I'd like to invite Richard Kearns forward first. We have 2 minutes per speaker, and we have a clock to help guide your time. After that is Karen Bonadillo. Good morning.
Hey, good morning. Congratulations.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kearns.
My name is Richard Kearns. I'm an AIDS activist and long-term survivor, medical cannabis patient and advocate, poet, and journalist. I see no reason. Who needs Rick Warren? We can do invocations ourselves. Invocation for Obama's inauguration by a person with AIDS and a medical pot patient. I do not need to reach my hand as far as starlight or wind or the bright and cratered moon or even the sacred fire that hugs its arms around our world, dawn and dusk, sunset and sunrise, burning red and gold and sacred. I only need recall the pre-existent blessings I have found of doubt and death and defiance in my heart and hand, and yours as well. The blessings of doubt that lead us to question what is knowable and verifiable, what is believable and provable, fact and fancy, science and ideology, to lead examined lives or to be led by the nose, to know what is knowable and what is only wishable, what is thought, feeling, truth, and fact, to grasp what is just or be forever fooled. The blessings of death begin with wisdom. When I consider the end of all things and how it behooveth me to be, to know my own beginnings and endings unafraid but awed, to know my hand can only hold so much, carry so much, hammer so much, count so much, lift so much, write only so many words, but take away nothing, just give, just be the kiss and cup of grace. The blessings of defiance is the blessing of the opposable thumb. Defiance built into our biology. Defiance makes us whole. Defiance in this limited world is a mechanism of action. When Gandhi said, "Be the change," he was defiant. He was a thumb, inspired and fired by love and the passions of justice. So let it be for us all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Bonadillo is our next speaker. And after that, we'll hear from Donna Pearman in Van Nuys. Good morning.
Good morning, City Council members. I am here today to ask for your support in closing down the elephant exhibit and sending Billy to a sanctuary. On November 19th, we all had the pleasure of having in these historic chambers the famous and well-known Dr. Joyce Poole, Ph.D., who has studied and lived with elephants for over 33 years in the wild. I won't forget her words. Elephants need to have both space for mind and body. They need to have space for both mind and body. Ladies and gentlemen, that's a very important statement. I propose to you that an elephant exhibit of 3.5 acres separated by 4 separate pens where these animals will not be able to roam is certainly not enough space, especially if the zoo wants to bring in 10 more elephants. Ladies and gentlemen, roaming was never brought into this equation. Those supporting closing the elephant exhibit and moving Billy to pause include the world-famous experts such as Dr. Poole, Dr. Keith Lindsay, and the well-known Dame Daphne Sheldrick, who has worked with elephants for over 50 years. Humane citizens in our city, across the United States, we all agree that the Los Angeles Zoo does not have the necessary space to provide these elephants. They necessarily need to have space and the companionship of other elephants. I would like to share with you now the findings of a brand new study which was not revealed the last time you were here on December 3rd. This is the prestigious Scientific Journal of Science. In a survey of...
Would you like to give it to the Sergeant at Arms? We'll make sure it gets circulated.
I will. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bandia. Thank you. We'll make sure that gets distributed. We appreciate your comments today. Donna Perriman is our next speaker out in Van Nuys. After that is Zuma Dog here.
Okay, hello.
Good morning.
Good morning. First, I want to congratulate you, Mr. Garcetti, on being married to Amy. I didn't know that last week. It's easy to get state secrets to know a few details on your wedding, but anyway. Anyway, March 2nd is coming. People need to stand up and say enough is enough. Enough of Mr. Garcetti's secret memos. DWP already raised our rates, more than double just recently for improvements. Now Prop B wants to quadruple our rates for solar panels. Mr. Garcetti says it won't. You want to take his word for it? I don't. It's too much at stake. We need to know the truth. People already voted for Prop R, which I like to see overturned. Deceptive lying the way it got voted in. People will buy large purchases out of state, will drive people away. We already have one of the largest sales tax. Soon it will be the largest by far. People want to be taxed apparently. Soon you ask for more property tax while our city spends. Our taxpayers want to give more, and take us smarter ones with them. Spread the poverty. Let's vote for Zuma Dog for mayor. He'll fix it up. We don't need Villaraigosa. He's out for himself. And Noel Weiss for city attorney. Another problem is Department of Motor Vehicles has a loophole that lets a 15-year-old drive her friends after she's taken them to school and home again. Young teenagers shouldn't be responsible for other people in the car. It's bad enough they can just be responsible enough for themselves. It's a safety issue. Close the loophole. People, please stop voting for more increases. It's bad enough to let the meters have gone up from 25 cents to $1 an hour. Now, I heard that the paper said it might be a big mistake because people are not buying. People are stopped going. I know people want to park. I know I will go less places because I don't want to pay $1 for an hour. We less revenue in the long run. This is a big mistake. Let's get rid of all these increases and let's bring back our meters back to where it was. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Zuma Dog. After that will be Lydia Grant. Good morning.
Yes. Good morning, City Council, especially good morning, City of Los Angeles. Thank you to everybody I've met over the weekend at so many events. I very much appreciate all the support. Very special occasion. Lydia Grant is here today who will be speaking. Please stay tuned because she's very much tuned into the community over the schools and education. And, yes, I'd like to remind City Council they'll be appearing on ABC News Nightline tomorrow, Wednesday, January 14th at 11:35 p.m. And when I say City Council's appearing, really what I mean is Zuma Dog will be featured on ABC News Nightline, and you guys are going to be B-roll when we talk about how shady you are. Now, I'm running for mayor, and if you'd like to read more about my platform, you can go to zumadogformayor.com. Here's some of the things I'm concerned about and why I'm running for mayor. First of all, I think the city is under attack from City Hall, under the mayor's office, racketeering, fraud, waste, and abuse. Yes, I am concerned that this city is going down because it's being sucked dry from racketeering, fraud, waste, and abuse. Zuma Dog will run audits and knock the corruption out right off the bat. Secondly, Measure B, you've heard so much about it, solar energy. Zuma Dog has never seen more community outreach and more discussion as focused to unite the public. This is bad. It's no on Measure B. This has nothing to do with solar power. This has to do with the mayor rewarding a bid contractor who he wants to reward it to. And the LA Times said it's extremely risky. The city's chief legislative analysis said, there's no plan. This is biting off way more we can chew. Eric Garcetti, the council member, withheld an important consulting report that said this thing's basically a big, extremely risky, overpriced. It's going to cost way more. We're talking about Measure B. And this is why they always tell you it's one thing, it's something else. No on Measure B, no on Villaraigosa. Zuma Dog for Mayor, ZumaDogForMayor.com.
Thank you, Mr. Dog. Our next speaker is Lydia Grant. After that will be Elizabeth Perrotta. Good morning.
Hi, I'm Lydia Grant. I'm an LAUSD parent volunteer and also on one of the neighborhood councils. I just really want to thank Mr. Alarcon, Ms. Hahn, Mr. Zine today for addressing an issue related to LAUSD. I think that it may not be the best suggestion, but I do appreciate that people do care about our kids and want to help make it better. The other thing I'd like to say, and this is actually a win for the people, and that is that Home Depot is leaving Sunland Tujunga. I especially want to thank Wendy for helping us with that. That was very important, and especially to our school kids, because there was an elementary school directly behind the building. And I just want to thank you for all your hard work, and hope that we can work together as neighborhood councils and as communities to help change the district with the city's support. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Grant. Our next speaker is Elizabeth Perrotta. After that will be Sherry Carroll. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Elizabeth Perrotta, and I'm here to express my support for the Los Angeles Zoo and the completion of the Pachyderm Forest. I've been involved with the zoo since the fall of 2004. I've spent hundreds of hours observing Billy, and I've had the opportunity to volunteer with the Elephant Keepers several times. I can say from firsthand experience that Billy is a very healthy, intelligent, and happy elephant. He receives supreme care and really loves those around him. If you ever get the chance, he's the most fun to watch between 4 and 5 as the zoo is closing. PAWS advertises that the sanctuary is for abused, neglected, and retired entertainment animals. Billy is none of that. The risk of moving a male adult elephant who hasn't been transported since he was 4 years old is really, really high, and it scares me. The situation he faces at PAWS is really not that much different than he has right now. If he remains at the zoo, there will be more elephants, so he will not be alone. And at the zoo, there is the prospect of future breeding, and hopefully he'll have a family. He will never have that chance at a sanctuary. I spoke on behalf of the zoo back in 2006, just as I am now. You as a council voted not only just to continue with it, but to make the exhibit larger. Now the exhibit is 30% complete, and I am not sure why we're revisiting the issue, if it's because of the budget crisis or other issues. I really don't know, but whatever the reason, I do urge you, as representatives of the for the citizens of the City of Los Angeles, to complete the project that has the overwhelming support, as well as the support of surrounding communities. Please finish what you started and complete the Pachyderm Forest. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Sherry Carroll. After that is Daniel Wright. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, City Council. My name is Sherry Carroll. I have been an employee and volunteer for the Los Angeles Zoo Research Program for almost 25 years. I am speaking to you today on my own time in regards to our elephant Billy. However, I believe the issue is no longer just about him. It is about a team of dedicated, caring professionals, real people whose integrity and characters are being systematically attacked with half-truths and innuendo. And it is about the zoo director, one of the most highly regarded professionals in the field, whose good name is being dragged through the mud. This man has taken our zoo from the embarrassment to the city that it was just a few years ago to the fine, highly regarded institution that it is today throughout the country. I can't understand why some of you can't see the forest through the trees. Literally, you have a treasure in your own backyard that gets richer with the creation of each new animal habitat. Please continue to take care of it. I urge you to support the staff who were selected for their expertise at the zoo and to move forward with the magnificent elephant enclosure for our city, for our zoo, and most of all, for our elephant, Billy. Thank you.
Thank you. Daniel Wright is our next speaker. After that is Michael Carrion. Good morning.
Good morning. Daniel Wright, 467 Crane Boulevard, on behalf of the Friends of the Southwest Museum. My voice is weak today as a result of what the famous Miss Adelaide in Guys and Dolls called the post-nasal drip. But post-nasal drip or not, I rise today to make a comparison between the recent revelation of mismanagement of the endowment of the Museum of Contemporary Art and the Autry National Center's mismanagement of the merger of the Southwest Museum. There are interesting parallels. We have distributed to you today a copy of an LA Times article on the MoCA endowment scandal. The article points out that a proposed merger of MoCA with the LA County Museum of Art would obliterate MoCA. The MoCA board recently wisely turned down the merger proposal, perhaps looking to the Autry Southwest merger as a cautionary tale. We note that some on this city council have a motion in front of the Arts Committee commanding the city departments to come forward with resources and strategies to help assure MoCA and its collection remain at its current location on Grand Avenue. This is commendable and recognizes the importance of MoCA to this city's multicultural fabric. There is no similar motion, however, before the Arts Committee on how city resources may further be leveraged to assure the Southwest Museum, this city's first and most historic museum, remain at its current location. There is, however, a proposal by the Autry Museum to use the land in Griffith Park to expand the Autry and relocate the collections and exhibition spaces of the Southwest Museum to our city land. Our coalition and the people can see the potential hypocrisy of dedicating city assets to maintain MoCA at its present location while assisting in the systematic destruction of the Southwest Museum at the hands of the Autry. Please pay close attention to this issue when it comes before you. Thank you, council members.
Thank you. Michael Carrion is our next speaker. After that is Rick Nightingale out in Van Nuys.
Yes, my name is Michael Carrion, and I've yet to hear from Ms. Grohl's office. I'm here to speak. Excuse me, sir, I'm speaking. Okay? Here to speak on the lack of parking enforcement. I have in front of me the parking enforcement policy for government vehicles. It states very clearly, Mr. LeBon, there's no parking, no exemption for tollway zones, stopping zones, red curbs for buses, no parking on street cleaning, passenger loading and unloading, temporary parking stopping, handicap, fire hydrants, and taxi zones. Yet, they park there on a daily basis, and your meter mates, parking enforcement, refuse to enforce the law. So my question there is this a conspiracy for the city to not charge themselves or their employees? Are they held at a different standard? I've got 86 pictures here of LAPD parked right outside in a tollway zone, which they are not exempt from. According to this, it states on any follow-up business, they cannot park in the red. It also states that they cannot park for routine business follow-ups in the red. But they do. Mr. Zumadog talks about the corruption in the city. I talk about the corruption in the police department. It starts with just simply parking enforcement. Then it ends up to Rafael Perez. If you don't nip it in the bud, it starts now. A few minutes ago, I was having a conversation in the back, a private conversation, and I made a comment that the city attorney was late again. The city attorney felt that he had to turn around, walk up to me, and tell me that he was here and call me an asshole. Yet he sits there and dictates to people what they cannot use at this podium. Well, Mr. City Attorney, kiss my ass.
Next speaker will be Daniel Weissman.
To that citizen on the side with the Sergeant of Arms, I don't like that language. And if you would come over here to the Sergeant of Arms, please.
Sir, again, I will have the city attorney remind you of the rules of conduct and courtesy in this chamber. The use of profanity is not allowed and will be strongly discouraged. Mr. Weissman.
to settle. All right, thank you. I'm going to discuss this morning a matter of procedure because I think it's going to reflect on an issue that's coming up a little later, the issues around the neighborhood council files. Apparently it is mandatory for the council and for other city agencies to put their agenda up 3 days before so that everybody can know when an issue is coming forward, at least that long. Last week, this time, we were to have heard the issues around the neighborhood council files. And only on Monday afternoon was it made known that the president of the council had suggested that it be put off. We still haven't heard a reason for that happening. And I think you disappointed a lot of people. I think if we are a little bit short of the numbers of people who are here, part of it is because of this lack of reception from the council. And I think we're entitled to know what happened last Monday afternoon that made you change your mind, Mr. Garcetti. Why are we now coming back a second time?
Could you restate the question? We can't respond very long.
Well, I'm discussing
Are you
the
talking
fact
about the
that
council file index?
the council files were to
There was a ask, as is often the case. I'll just briefly answer this from the chair of the committee and council members who had a couple outstanding issues they wished to discuss. So they asked, I'm the parliamentarian on this, and they asked a 1-week delay. It was not a personal delay, that I had something that I asked for. That's why it happened.
It wasn't explained to the public and to many neighborhood council people, and I'm glad to hear you mention that, because, you know, the issue has been almost 4 years in the running. I guess the wheels of justice do grind very, very fine, but they certainly are very, very slow. Look forward to speaking to you on the issue of neighborhood council files in just a few minutes. Thank you.
Rick Nightingale in the San Fernando Valley.
Yeah, Rick Nightingale. It's really something that you people don't have any respect, even the people up in Sacramento, for the people that elected you, regarding where the money comes from to turn around and take care of debts and so forth. I mean, if you turn around and ran your bank account this way, I think you'd be evicted from your house like so many other people. You turn around and there is a budget and you can't even go along with it. So much money comes in, so much money goes out. You people were just, I cannot believe you couldn't figure it out that there was going to be a windfall, and now the windfall ain't there no more. It's just like everybody else. You turn around and you spend money that you barely have coming in, and then when the windfall quits, there is nothing. And everybody cries the blues that, oh, we don't have no more money, and what can we do? But it's like you turn around and have a house full of people, and you keep feeding all these people, but then when they turn around and there's nobody has any income, what do? You think you're going to keep feeding these people? You can't. You have to turn around and ask your guests, it's time to leave so I can feed my family. Well, you can't keep feeding everybody and think it's all going to take place for everybody else to turn around and take care of all that. You owe it to the people that elected you to take care of us. Now, I don't want you to take care of me. I could care less, but you are holding the cards with all the money coming in. So we have to depend on you. Same as Sacramento. And then we turn around and like the immigrations. We're going into the third generation of people, the immigrants coming into the city of Los Angeles. It's ridiculous. And you think that you people are going to turn around and do anything about immigrations? There is no way that it's going to be taken care of. No wonder everybody's going into basically the white flight again, if you want to call it that we're just tired. All my friends are leaving. They're just tired of all of your shenanigans and cheating, scrounging around and cheating everybody.
Thank you very much, sir. All right, that I believe marks the end of our public comment, and we will go directly to, I believe, Mr. Labange and Mr. Garcetti on item 35, which we will take out of order for a special presentation.
Welcome, sir. Good morning. That's great.
This is item number 35, so I greatly appreciate it because today in Los Angeles is Korean American Day. I would like to ask Mr. Parks to join us as well. Los Angeles and its adjacent cities are home to more than 700,000 Korean Americans, the largest concentration of Koreans outside the Korean Peninsula. While the Korean community is dispersed throughout California, an area known as Koreatown is right here in the heart of Los Angeles. Originally started at a little market at Jefferson in Vermont. It has grown up all the way Vermont Avenue, all of the Olympic Corridor in the center of the city, the Wilshire Center as well. The history of the immigrants to America dates back 102 years. Over that time, many, many people have come to Los Angeles and contributed to the welfare and benefit of our city. They did not father in their pursuit of the American dream, but through great work effort, great tenacity and sacrifice, they established a new home here in America and educated their children to high standards. While the first Korean immigrants fought for the freedom and independence of the motherland, invaded by the Japanese Empire, their children grew up to be patriotic American citizens, served in our armed forces, the United States during World War II, and made many other very important contributions. Where the lives of the first wave of the 7,226 immigrants has faded away, they have grown and greatly improved by the Immigration Act of 1965 that opened the doors wide open for the second wave of Korean immigrants. Whereas in search for better opportunity for their children beginning in the 1970s, the magnitude of the dynamic Korean immigration took place here in our city. In a quarter of a century, the young Korean Americans will join the mainstream and begin to make significant contributions in the field of finance, technology, medicine, education, media, government, as well as many, many other areas. This community is very dynamic, and we're all so happy to have them as contributing members of the Los Angeles region. So on behalf of Mayor Antonio Villaraigosa, on behalf of my colleague Herb Wilson, joined by Ed Reyes, Bernard Parks, and the President of Council, Eric Garcetti, as well as everyone, we want to salute you all and very much salute our Council General Jae-Soo Kim, who is right here to receive this commendation on Korean American Day. Thank you. Thank you. And before I ask you to speak, I would like to ask my colleagues to express their support and great love of the Korean American community. And I also want to point out that in the 15th district in Miss Han is a Korean American Friendship Bell, which gets so special in there. Thank you very much. Mr. Garcetti. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, and Consul General Kim, it's always an honor to have you here, as well as leaders from the Korean American community. It's been my honor as a council member to travel twice to Korea to represent the United States of America in Los Angeles. We have such a rich society made richer by the work of the Korean American community. I saw the Korean American Legislative Caucus over there of deputies. We have people who are leaders as commissioners in our departments, in the business community. And it's interesting that when you look at the statistics of the OECD countries, which are the industrialized countries of the world, the two countries that put in the most work hours per worker is Korea and the United States of America. I think we share a very hard work ethic. We share the immigrant experience here in America. And we also praise you for what you've done to Los Angeles specifically. The urban unrest of 1992 was a very traumatic time for the Korean American community, and the strength and the resilience with which the community has not only lifted itself up but reached out and created connections with all communities here is a model for this entire city. So thank you, Mr. Labange. I have the luck of the just northern edge of Koreatown in my district, but we, in redistricting, made sure that Koreatown properly was just in two districts, in Mr. Wesson and Mr. Reyes' district, and we look forward to continuing to strengthen Korean political power here in the city, as well as to embrace the economic contribution. So we thank you and we celebrate this day. It's really not just one day a year. It's 365 days a year in some neighborhoods, but today we especially celebrate Korean American Day. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Reyes.
I just want to say thank you to our Councilmember Tom Labange for bringing this day forward and celebrating in front of the whole council, the whole city, indeed the whole region. The Korean American community has been an outstanding contributor to this city, as demonstrated by the role of the churches, the small businesses throughout our city, the role and their support for our brand new police station in Vermont, the Olympic Police Station, which will be covering a good part of the Korean community. But more importantly, their activism in bringing forth the great diversity of the city. In Lincoln Heights, Young Knight Church, one of the largest churches in the southern area of California, brings forward many communities of Latino, Chinese American, the diversity in Northeast, in cleaning up the LA River, in cleaning up our neighborhoods, and promoting the Boys and Girls Club. So it's a very substantial and a very real way in which they contribute to the city. I want to say thank you to them for the great contributions. You deserve this great day. Thank you so much.
Councilmember Bernard Parks.
Thank you, Tom, and I want to welcome our Council General here. Representing the 8th District, we believe that's the home of Koreatown, where Koreatown started. We're very proud of the Korean American Church that now is a museum. And one of the things that we're just so pleased at is that in the 8th District, a large portion of our mom and pops, and particularly our grocery business, is part of the Korean American entrepreneurship that we see throughout this city. Without them, we would be in dire shape as it relates to goods and services within our community. And so we're always appreciative of that relationship. We look forward to continue working with them. And as the President of the Council says, Korean American Day is every day because of their involvement each and every day in our community, not only the economic impact that they make, but also the cultural and social. And we look forward to them and their partnership of the last several years is being a part of the Martin Luther King Parade that's coming up on January 19th, where they now play a major role as part of that parade through South Los Angeles. So thank you for that ability to intertwine yourself throughout this community, and we look forward to working with you.
Thank you, Mr. Parks. Now I would like to welcome Council General Kim to speak on behalf of the Korean community.
I'm so honored to be here. Thank you, council members. Thank you, everybody. Today is an especially important day. First Korean American Day has been recognized by City of Los Angeles, where the largest Korean community, American community, reside outside Korea. And as you already know, U.S. was the first Western country that signed a treaty of commerce and friendship with Korea back in 1882. And since then, in 1903, a group of Korean immigrants came to U.S. to settle down here for better life. They, Korean American and other Americans share one thing in common. They all came here for better life. It is a land of opportunity. And really, Korean American had made a lot of contribution to American society. And since in early 19th centuries, Korea and U.S. has maintained wonderful relations. And I really appreciate for your support for a strong Korea and U.S. alliance and strong U.S. Cultural exchange and friendship. Thank you so much for your support, and I'm honored to be here again. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Council General. And it was so special on Saturday morning, we were hiking in Griffith Park.
Yeah, my hiking buddy.
And we had
Mr. Labange, before we move on, Ms. Han would like to say a few words.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, I just wanted to rise and salute our Council General Kim and our other friends from the Korean American community as we celebrate Korean American Day here in Los Angeles. We were together on New Year's Eve, yes, where we ring the Korean Friendship Bell at midnight. It's broadcast live to Korea, and it's a wonderful opportunity to reestablish our ties and our relationships with the people of Korea. The Korean Friendship Bell, which was given to us in 1976, stands as a permanent, beautiful symbol of the friendship. between the people of Korea and the people of the United States. The fact that San Pedro got that incredible symbol is something that I look upon every day as good luck. And we ring that bell 4 times a year. Once on the United States Independence Day, July 4th. Once on the Korean Independence Day, I believe August 15th.
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you. Thank you. New Year's Eve. And then we've added one day, the U.S. Constitution Day, which is like September, I want to say 15th, somewhere around there. But, you know, every time we ring that bell, it sends out the message of the relationship between the people of Korea and the people of the United States. And every year, we also hope and we pray for the peaceful unification of Korea. And that is something, until that day happens, where loved ones, family members, friends can peacefully be united, then we will not rest. And know that it is a symbol that we do that, but it is in our hearts that we want that day to come soon. So congratulations. I love celebrating the Korean American Day. And isn't it interesting that over 100 years ago, the first Korean immigrant came to the United States to make a better life for them. And what has happened in this 100 years is, of course, the Korean American community has made a better life for all of us who have the opportunity to work and live and to be with you. Thank you. 감사합니다.
And Madam President, we do have a special guest in the Korean community. Yes, Ms.
Had my good colleague, Ms. Wendy Gruhl, is without her voice today, and she specifically said she wanted to stand up and support the Korean American community and to also add her best wishes for Korean American Day here today.
So, and if Wendy was here, she'd say, "감사합니다, 친구." Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. But we also, Madam President, have Dae-Young Shin, who's a national member of the Korean American community, who is here all the way from Tampa, Florida, for some brief remarks.
I'll make it brief, as best as I can. As chair of the 2009 Korean American Day Convention, I would like to thank the City of Los Angeles and its leadership, the Honorable Mayor Antonio Villarigos, and City Council President Eric Garceta, and the fellow esteemed council members for the honor to be here today and as chair in the proclamation of Korean American Day. Just wonderful event, and historic, I might say. In 2005, the United States House of Representatives and the Senate, as you know, had passed a resolution to establish January 13th as day to honor the contributions Koreans have made to this great nation. This day is the day of celebration of hard work and the spirit of entrepreneurship possessed of the Korean American community, and the day of a reflection on the opportunities and the blessings that this great nation affords to its citizens of every nationality. While this is a day of celebration and the reflection for Korean American across the country, Los Angeles, as a home to the largest Korean American community in the United States, has a special place in this day. As such, the city's proclamation serves as a source of particular encouragement to the community, both in Los Angeles and at large. My belief and hope is that this encouragement ignites continued ownership of the honor by convicting the city Korean Americans community to strive harder and to contribute more and to serve with increased passion for the good of all. Thank you again for the opportunity to celebrate this day.
Madam President, on behalf of all of us here, we say 감사합니다 to you and thank you for this wonderful opportunity to celebrate Korean American Friendship Day. 감사합니다.
Thank you very much to all of you, and thank you for honoring the Korean American community. And while we are waiting for our council president, we'll go to item 20.
Madam President, do you wish to take a vote on item 35?
Yeah. Well, yes, please. Please open the roll on that. Close the roll. Tabulate the vote.
13 ayes.
All right, let's go to item 20 next. And there is a speaker card on that item. It's Mr. Zuma Dog.
Yes, microphone check 1 2 1 2. Yes, I'm practically part of the press opportunity. You know what? I'll yield this so we can move on because this. Oh, you know what? We'll go ahead. Unless you want to restart. Restart the clock, y'all. If you restart the clock, otherwise I'll yield. Thank you. Yes, this is a very boring, unsexy item, and we have a lot of important things today, but it looks pretty big. It says here, acceptance of bids relative to notice of sale for a pipeline franchise in the city of Los Angeles. So Zumadog will be looking into that. Maybe some of the radio talk show hosts, the media, can look in to see what this is about. Oh, they want to award a bid for a pipeline franchise. Okay, so once again, we need to look into this. I'll be talking to maybe some of the city council members. Can someone have a staffer come and talk to this? Because I think if you have a sale of a pipeline franchise of the city of Los Angeles, I have 25 seconds. Let's see here. It says require a successful bidder file a faithful performance bond in duplicate with the city. Okay. Right now they're doing photo opportunities, and I'd just like to say, isn't it ironic that as a city council member, Janice Hahn spoke endlessly and relentlessly. Then when the featured speaker was here, they said, oh, please make it brief, 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 brief. That says it all, my friends.
Thank you very much. There's no speakers in the queue on this item. Mr. Clerk, would you please open the roll? Close the roll. Tabulate the vote.
13 ayes.
Next item we will go to is item 22. There's a speaker card on item 22 from Mr. Zuma Dog. Mr. Dog, would you please come to the microphone, please? Thank you. There's no speakers in the queue on that item. Mr. Clerk, if you would please open the roll on that item. Exactly. Close the roll. Tabulate the vote.
13 ayes.
Next item is item 23. Again, speaker card by Mr. Zuma Dog.
Yes, so much shadiness, racketeering, and corruption, so little time. Let's take a little bit here. I don't like when I see this. Transfer unencumbered money in the Department of Neighborhood Empowerment Fund to the reserve fund or the unappropriated balance. First of all, it's a typo. It should say for the unappropriated balance. Excuse me. I do not like when I see that money from the Neighborhood Empowerment Fund that is unencumbered be transferred into something that you want. You know, you shouldn't have to transfer this into the reserve fund if you ran the city properly. This is like, you know, the city operates like basically a meth addict, okay? It's like a crack addict, the way it behaves and has to keep supporting its habit. And so, first of all, I just don't like this. Let me just say, damn it, I am really getting outraged when I look on this agenda, the racketeering, the transfer of funds. Get your act together. I think we need the federal U.S. government to get down to Los Angeles City Hall based on what I'm seeing on this agenda today alone.
We have a Cindy Cleghorn.
Good morning, council members. My name is Cindy Cleghorn, and I'm on the I served on the Neighborhood Council Review Commission, and I just wanted to be sure with regards to this item that you're familiar with the recommendation from the Commission that any monies that are unappropriated by neighborhood councils go back and stay within the Department of Neighborhood Empowerment to be accessed for outreach efforts so that other neighborhood councils could access those funds to continue their efforts with outreach. So I just want to make sure that you are aware of the Neighborhood Council Review Commission's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. There are no further speaker cards. Mr. Alarcon.
This matter went directly to Budget Committee by way of the City Attorney's Office. I did not have the opportunity to consider it in the Education Neighborhood Councils Committee. I would like to have the opportunity to do so. So I would request that we refer this matter to the Education and Neighborhood Council Committee.
Is there a second?
Is there a second to Mr. Alarcon's motion to send this matter back to committee?
Wendy Gruhl.
Do we have a second from Ms. Gruhl? Thank you, Ms. Gruhl. All right, Mr. Clerk, there's no further speakers in the queue. Mr. Clerk, would you please open the roll on Mr. Alarcon's motion? Close the roll. Tabulate the vote.
13 ayes.
Thank you very much. Our next item will be item number 28, and we have 2 speaker cards on that. Again, Mr. Zuma Dog.
Yes, it's the world-famous special event fee, the biggest money-sucking drain of the general fund, the biggest fraud, waste, abuse, corruption, racketeering, slush fund money. Zuma Dog for mayor, #1 issue, the special event fee. Even Mayor Antonio Villaraigosa has joined me in asking for a moratorium of this. Let me explain to the people, when this budget crisis, when they are going to be saying we're going to fire teachers, we're going to be cutting library hours, we're going to be cutting Parks and Rec, layoffs, firings, then what do? You come and you quadruple the rates of the parking meters to hurt business more. You triple trash collection fees. You raise all types of fees and things that are shady, and you're just sucking as much money out of people at a time when there is none. Then what do? You spend money on these special event fees. Did you know? I wonder if the city of Los Angeles constituents, the voters, know that you're giving $100,000 or whatever this is, the Grammy Awards, and to this special event fee money is to provide benefit to the community, open to the public, not to be used for commercial private entities. This is a money-sucking vampire drain on the general fund. I think it's a payback. This is payback for your political friends and cronies. You funnel money into their events. You funnel money into their nonprofits. You funnel money into their events, into their nonprofits from the general fund. The city, okay, again, why don't you remember, I'll be discussing this issue on ABC News Nightline, hopefully, tomorrow. Zuma Dog, your fraud, waste, and abuse, your corruption, your racketeering has finally made it to ABC News national attention. Tune in tomorrow, January 14th, Wednesday, ABC News Nightline. Zuma Dog will be talking about the #1 thing I say. I'm concerned about fraud, waste, and abuse, racketeering of this money under this agenda item that comes through every day. Zuma Dog for mayor. Stop being money-sucking vampires.
Thank you. Our next speaker will be Donna Pearman. I understand the visual is down in Van Nuys, but I think we do have audio contact. Donna Pearman?
Okay, I hope so. Anyway, I want to ask the public, why do you let them keep raising taxes and increase everything like our sales tax, and you let the council raise these fees 2 or 3 times a week? We want more revenue in the city, and how can you raise the meter fees and trash fees and sales tax and still waive these special event fee waivers? It's not right. It doesn't help Los Angeles. The biggest ones is the big one over here, the 2009 Northern Trust Open. That's for $23,174. Does the city really have to pay for this? Not every. Does the city have to spend that much money? That's too much money on this event. And our biggest one is, of course, the 51st Annual Grammy Awards, $124,163. Now, that's why I want to say, does the city really have to pay for this? Not everyone likes the Grammys or wants to watch the Grammys or gets any benefit from it. And Zuma Dog would say, this is not what the fees were intended for. Our city is having problems, and you're waiving all these fees. And you have the 4th of July fireworks show and concert on July the 4th. Does it really have to cost that much? Someone's overcharging you. Look into that. It's a fireworks show shouldn't cost $12,424, and you probably will double dip and ask for people. All these things they double dip like our DWP does, and the same with the over 21st annual Canoga Park Memorial Parade. $16,125. That's too much money, and How about this Dia de los Muertos festival? Why are we having fees way up in November? You already know that you're going to do it way over in November, and you're sure that that's what's going to cost? What does Dia de Muertos mean anyway? Let those who benefit pay for it. Let's get rid of these fee waivers. It's about time. We can't afford them.
Thank you, Ms. Pearman. All right, there's no speakers in the queue on this item. Mr. Clerk, would you please open the roll on it? Close the roll. Tabulate the vote.
13 ayes.
All right, the next item we'll take is item number 34. And we have a speaker card again from Mr. Zumadog. And Mr. Zumadog, what is, would you come, you're passing on your 1 minute left? All right, so you're waiving that. Mr. Zumadog has waived his 1 minute left for today. Thank you.
Let's go ahead and take up item 33 next, please. And like to,
Mr. President, were there any more cards on item 34?
We do not have any other cards. That will close the public comment. Let's go ahead and vote on 34. Please open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
13 ayes.
Okay, that is approved. Item 33, please, called special by Ms. Perry.
Mr. President, on January 27th, 28th, and 29th, the Los Angeles Homeless Services Authority will be conducting the 2009 Greater Los Angeles Homeless Count to determine the prevalence of homelessness in the county of Los Angeles and to survey over 3,000 homeless people to obtain demographic information and provide estimates of the nature of homelessness in LA County. The data gathered from the homeless count is extremely valuable. It supplies government agencies, service providers, and housing providers with a reliable estimate of the homeless population in the city and the county of Los Angeles. These data are used to preserve millions of dollars in federal funds by demonstrating our region's need for resources, raises public awareness about the issue of homelessness, and accurately identifies the needs of populations that are hardest to serve, measure performance in eliminating homelessness, and improve and redirect the types of services and housing needed to eliminate homelessness. So now is the time for all members of our City Council to offer their knowledge and understanding about the homeless issue in your council district and to give pertinent information to the Los Angeles Homeless Services Authority, our lead agency on homelessness. We need information how to find homeless individuals in your district, such as encampments, and connect with any and all agencies that are serving the homeless in your council district. And I might add, this effort needs volunteers. So I encourage all city employees and the public to join in this important effort. Please look at the Los Angeles Homeless Services Authority website for the count at LAHSA, LAHSA.org, and you can receive this information electronically, and please contact LAHSA to volunteer. There will be a presentation of the 2009 homeless count at the Homeless Ad Hoc Committee this Thursday morning at 8:30, City Hall, room 1010, for anyone who wants to hear more about this very important event, an event that will surely shape the future of the city of Los Angeles as we seek federal funding to provide for social services and for housing. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Rosendahl.
I want to thank Ms. Perry for making it a special rather than just putting it on consent so we could have this visibility on this issue. Thank you, Jan, for that. Obviously, we have 80 or 70,000 homeless people in LA County. It is a big deal. In fact, we're the homeless capital of America, as we are also the gang capital of America. So we have lots of real critical social issues here. It is critical that we get a count. The reason is, as the federal government creates its formulas, it depends on the numbers. And those numbers impact the social services, the dollars, and all the other supports that go with it. I can tell you that in the 11th District, in the Venice area in particular, we have a substantial number of homeless. They float between Santa Monica and Venice. Some feel we have 2,000, some say we have 5,000. We don't know the exact number. We also have people who are living in campers and cars. A lot of it has been pressurized into 40 blocks in the 11th district. So it's a big deal. So we look for volunteers. The Ad Hoc Committee on Homelessness, as Ms. Perry said, will be focusing on it more. But it is critical that we get the count. And here's the big story. I hope Barack Obama, who talks about hope and change, and yes, we can, delivers on social services and commitment to the American people, be it transportation infrastructure, stimulus packages for jobs, or dealing with the social agencies and issues that affect us. How can we be the richest country on earth and have more homelessness than anywhere else, than maybe India or some of these other third world nations? It's a big deal, and I hope the new president, after he's sworn in next Tuesday, provides that kind of national leadership for all of us on the homeless issue. Again, thank you, Ms. Perry, for your leadership on the committee and everything else you do around here.
Thank you very much. And I know there are many different ways of volunteering to help out with that homeless count. It's part of the Day of Service and the continuing President-elect Obama's continuing service initiative. I know some of the local Obama supporters have put forward the homeless count as a great way to contribute. So thank you very much, Ms. Perry, and check out around where you can log on and be part of that count as well. So with that, let's go ahead and open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
13 ayes.
Okay, that is approved. Next item, please.
Mr. President, that would leave items 10, 11, and 24. However, there is a special one. Do you wish to take that up at this time?
Let's go ahead and take the special one real quick. Mr. City Attorney on the findings.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll recite the facts as presented to me by the maker of the motion for the Council's consideration of the adequacy of the findings. Since the posting of today's agenda, City staff processed a request by the LAPD that City Council offer a reward for information leading to the arrest of suspects in the murder of Marcus Vanellis on July 29th, 2008 at 853 East Adams Boulevard at approximately 8 p.m. Immediate action is required for the safety of the community. Council must first make findings pursuant to Government Code Section 54954.2 before considering the substantive motion.
Thank you very much. Anybody else on the findings? If not, let's go ahead and open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
13 ayes.
Pursuant to Rule 23, that item is now before us based on an emergency vote. Anybody on the substance? If not, let's prepare the roll and tabulate the vote.
13 ayes.
Thank you. We'll move that forthwith without objection. I'll take us back. If we could take up items 10 and 11 together. I'd like to recognize the chair of the committee, Mr. Alarcon.
Mr. President, I ask for a public comment period.
Okay. How long?
I don't think there's that many cards, so whatever the normal rules would be.
We've got, looks like, 8 cards, or 8 individuals wishing to speak on this?
3 minutes each.
Okay. 15 minutes total?
That would be fine. 2 minutes
so that's
each.
2 minutes each? Okay.
2 minutes
All right.
each is fine.
All right. So Mr. Wiseman is our first speaker. Danny Wiseman on items 10 and 11 are before us. And after that is Leonard Schaefer.
Do I understand we're taking all 3 at the same time, Mr. Chairman?
Just 10 and 11 right now.
10 and 11 right
Correct.
now. All right. Well, 10, of course, is the recommendation from the Education and Neighborhoods Committee to amend the request that originally came out last August the 11th. On September 9th, I sent a public communication as an individual, which is in the council file involved, and the Education and Neighborhoods Committee, of course, said no conflict of interest should be required or should even be imposed. The other 2 measures leave room to bring this council, this conflict of interest document back into effect. And what I'd like to do is at least speak of an alternative that may be important and may be useful to you. Let us not require the neighborhood councils to fill out a conflict of interest form. Let us request that when a neighborhood council fills out a neighborhood council file, that they make a declaration, the simplest possible declaration, that they have no conflict of interest. If they choose for any reason whatsoever not to make that declaration, they voluntarily recuse themselves from the formal discussion in their neighborhood council. However, they still retain the opportunity to advocate, oppose, or work for modification of that measure in this council, in the council's committees, and in the neighborhood councils. I hope that satisfies Mr. Smith specifically, because I think we'll probably get a lot way further if we try to do this in a comfortable, courteous, and acceptable way. I hope, Mr. Smith, you'll hear what I've said and take it to heart. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Leonard Schaefer. Good to see you, Mr. Schaefer. Good morning.
Morning, Mr. President. Morning, members of the council. Leonard Schaefer, Tarzana Neighborhood Council, Los Angeles Neighborhood Council Coalition, and NCRC Commissioner. The neighborhood councils, well, I stand with three hats. One, the Tarzana Neighborhood Council passed a resolution supporting the Bonk position on this issue. The Lank passed a resolution saying no disclosure. And personally, I have this to say, that neighborhood councils are part of the new political life of Los Angeles. Council files are the next logical extension of their advisory role. It expands our ability to bring government closer to the people, which is one of our charges. It is sometimes difficult for those who are new to the process to gain the trust of those who have held power over time. The issue of financial disclosure is one of trust. It is fair that the public know that neighborhood council members are aware of their obligations to act in fair and upright manner. They must know that neighborhood council members are prepared to make public anything that may constitute a financial conflict. To that end, this body should first approve the 2-year experiment for neighborhood council files. You should disapprove the filing of any formal disclosure such as Form 52, 53, or 52 modified. If you desire some type of disclosure with regards to council files, you should then adopt a procedure whereby neighborhood council members may acknowledge their burden to disclose if they do have a conflict, and that they should absent themselves from any discussion or vote on a council file if they have such a conflict. That should be the extent. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Schaefer. Our next speaker is Jill Banks-Urad.
I'd have to ask Gwen on that.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Sorry I missed the holiday party. I was not away, but I heard it was great.
Thank you. Thank you. Good morning, Mr. President, members of the council. I am here representing the Valley Alliance of Neighborhood Councils, which I chair, and also I'm the president of the Sherman Oaks Neighborhood Council. Both organizations voted unanimously that there should be no financial disclosure form filled out. And while I'm here to support item number 10, that is that no financial disclosure form should be required of members of councils filing neighborhood council files. It is a matter of trust. We think this should be a separate issue. Neighborhood council files should be a separate issue from filing disclosure forms. It's punitive to ask people to fill that out if they want to file a council file. I would like to call your attention, I don't know if these are all running together, Mr. President, but I did send each one of you a copy of the Valley Alliance of Neighborhood Councils declaration and the next page of the implementation. We do believe that anyone who's an elected member of the neighborhood council should fill out a declaration which says that they have taken the mandatory ethics training and that there are consequences if they don't take it. And that means they cannot vote on any issue relating to land use or financial matters. We also think that neighborhood councils should police themselves. The council should know who's taken the training and who hasn't. And so this is our alternative as the declaration. I hope that you will read it. It's very clear, and I think it's got a lot of meat in it. And lastly, it really will have a chilling effect on all neighborhood councils if you ask people to fill out financial disclosure forms. We're volunteers, we're not legislators, and we should be considered in that context. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jill. Appreciate it. Lydia Grant is our next speaker. After that is Zuma Dog.
Hi, Lydia Grant, Sunland Tahunga Neighborhood Council. I've always seen the neighborhood councils as a way the city has extended to the people that vote for the city council members as a system of checks and balances and to make sure that the people in the communities are being heard. The problem is if we're going to work together as a team, then we need to come equally. We need to both be willing to put forward that effort. And unfortunately, the financial disclosure seems as if it's just setting up barriers instead of really being open, honest, working teams. It's like, we'll work together, but you have to do this, this, and this first instead. And it just doesn't seem as if everybody's coming to the table with the same open ability to work together. And I ask that you not approve the disclosure forms and help us help you with the checks and balances. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lydia. Our next speaker is Zuma Dog. After that, we have 1 minute, sir.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, yes, 1 minute, and this is the one issue where I do kind of part with a lot of my good friends in the neighborhood councils. Neighborhood councils is supposed to be an independent body, a community voice in which represent community issues. The reason we need financial disclosure or some type of disclosure is because of the conflict of interest. Let me tell you, people, I've been to these meetings, including ones last night and all over the past couple of years. You can have a developer who has a very important project he's trying to get through. Well, he has his son sit on the board of a neighborhood council. You have developers with relatives sitting on the board. Of course you need disclosure. You have city council staff members. Excuse me, I am speaking here when I am done.
Mr. Dog, if you could just, we'll hold your time. Yes, Mr. Dog, please do not disrupt.
Point of order, Mr. Dog. The point of order is that he is referencing matters that are not subject to the council file issue. The matters that you are referencing are generally applied to actions taken by the neighborhood councils. He is therefore not speaking to the issue before us.
Last warning, Mr. Dog. We have a point of order coming forward. If you could please keep to the issues that are number 10 and 11.
Yes, this is filing of financial disclosure, and this is also tied in with 11, and the agenda says C-24. And you have city council member staffers like Richard Alarcon, staffer, who is the president of Eric Garcetti's Echo Park Neighborhood Council. I would like a friendly amendment that if you are Richard Alarcon staffer and you are sitting on Eric Garcetti's president board, that you disclose that. That is more important than financial. How do you like me now, Richard?
Thank you, Mr. Dog. I believe that disclosure was just made by free speech. All right, Mr. Alarcon wanted to. We can pass that on to Mr. Dog privately. Nina Royal is our next speaker. And then Cindy Cleghorn will be next. Good morning.
Good morning, City Council. First, I want to take the opportunity to thank every member on the City Council that supported Wendy Gruhl and the Sunland Tahunga Neighborhood Council regarding the home issue.
Excuse me, if we could please expel the person who is disrupting the meeting. Thank you.
Regarding items 10 and 11, the Sunland Tahunga Neighborhood Council supports these two measures, and we believe that it is very imperative that we be able to have council files and be able to track them through the system. I personally get the feeling that council members are a little bit frightened of this, and they really not should be. It will bring the neighborhood councils and the city council closer together, working much closer together for the benefit of the entire community. Are you also referring to number 24?
Not yet. We're just on 10 and 11 right now.
Okay. Sunland Tahunga Neighborhood Council is in favor. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Cindy Cleghorn, my new Facebook friend.
Yes. Good morning, Mr. President and City Council members. My name is Cindy Cleghorn, and I serve on the Sunland Tahunga Neighborhood Council as Secretary. I also served on the Neighborhood Council Review Commission and a member of the Valley Alliance of Neighborhood Councils. I distributed today the position of the Sunland Tahunga Neighborhood Council, and I had previously distributed it when I was here last time as well, with regards to this issue. Our neighborhood council efforts consistently require outreach to those not participating in their government. To require financial disclosure will be a stop sign to their participation. The effort by a neighborhood council to first pass a council file request through their own neighborhood council, then go to one or two other neighborhood councils is a huge undertaking for a neighborhood council. Neighborhood councils are very savvy. They're very sharp. They ask really pointed questions, and they thoroughly review with great scrutiny before they would do a council file. Don't limit the voice and participation with a financial disclosure requirement. Encourage ethics training. After all, that's what this is all about. We as leaders today will help with this. Remember, we are advisory. The legislation happens here with you in this room. We look forward to participating in the 2-year pilot program and coming back to you and with our progress. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Cindy. Our next speaker is Barbara Monahan-Burke.
Honorable Council members, Barbara Monahan Burke, Studio City board member and co-chair of our Government Affairs Committee. I'm speaking personally. The Studio City board members, both past and present, have expressed support of the motion by Council members Smith and Garcetti for the Neighborhood Council board members to participate in the filing of Neighborhood Council files without any financial disclosure forms required of the Neighborhood Council board members. Requiring an ethics training as suggested by the Valley Alliance of Neighborhood Council would be acceptable, so that board members would have the education to understand the matter of recusing oneself. I think that would be fair. But if you do require financial disclosure, we will lose a lot of the people in the community who otherwise would serve. Vast majorities of the people have said they would not serve on the neighborhood council, and I think that would just be unacceptable. So please, I do support number 10, and I hope you will vote for it that way. Thank you.
Thank you. Stephen Box is our next speaker. Good morning.
Morning. Stephen Box. I live in Hollywood, and I've had the pleasure of working with neighborhood councils throughout the city. And I assure you that from my perspective in the arena of civic engagement, the financial disclosure requirement would have a chilling effect, and I would urge you to modify it so that it's voluntary, offering board members the opportunity to recuse themselves from the arena on the issue if there's a conflict of interest. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. We'll credit you a minute and a half another time. Very efficient use of time. That is our last public speaker. Mr. Alarcon, did you want to continue? The floor is yours.
No, I do not want to continue this matter.
Okay, would you like to resolve this?
I would absolutely like to present the committee's report. Members, it was almost a year ago, 11 months ago, that we promised that by April 1st we would have this matter resolved, and that people would be able, in the neighborhood council system, would have the opportunity to introduce neighborhood council files. Obviously, that was an April Fool's joke, because what we strapped on the report was a requirement of ethics that was not intended. It was done at the last minute and last hour of discussion, and it was, I think, intended to sidetrack the opportunities for neighborhood council members to participate as they would so desire. By submitting neighborhood council files. So, in fact, the mission was accomplished, and we went through a series of hearings to identify a way to incorporate ethics into the neighborhood council file system in a way that made sense. And what we discerned was that there is no majority opinion on how to tie an ethics requirement onto the neighborhood council file system. Not only does the Ethics Commission disagree with the BONC, but BONC and ethics disagree with most neighborhood council members that I've had the opportunity to speak with, including the Valley Alliance and those who testified today. The bottom line is there's two separate issues before us. One issue is in item 10 and 11 would allow neighborhood councils to submit neighborhood council files, pure and simple, and we destroyed that opportunity by inserting this ethics provision. The ethics provision and whether or not neighborhood councils should stand up to the plate and have an additional ethics requirement other than state law, which requires them to have ethics training, is a separate issue. And so the committee, at the end of the day, said, well, wait a minute. We recognize the concern that our colleagues have about willy-nilly proposals that might come before committees if we allowed the neighborhood council file process to go forward. Those of us on the committee were very clear. We don't have any fear of that happening, but we recognize that that's a concern that was raised by our colleagues. So what we did was we said this would be a 2-year pilot project. We also said that neighborhood councils may submit up to 3 council files per calendar year, so we put a cap on it during that 2-year pilot project. And a council file submission would require the support of a second neighborhood council, that thereby demonstrating that it did have a citywide effect. And then we would also say that these files would be identified as neighborhood council files, so they would be distinct from council files. But we clearly said that no financial disclosure form shall be required by the members of the neighborhood council participating in the filing of the neighborhood council file. Now, we believe that is the purest, the simplest way for us to handle the neighborhood council file idea. Let's give the neighborhood councils an opportunity to do good or not. If they don't do good, we have the opportunity to not extend the program. But guess what? What if they do good? What if they introduce motions that are pertinent to the city that help us get through the largest budget crisis that we've seen in probably my lifetime? So I would encourage members to not undermine the neighborhood councils from what they would like to do in terms of participating in city government. Let's encourage them to participate in city government. Let's give them the opportunity to bring matters directly to committees. Let's give them the opportunity to declare their right as neighborhood council members to participate in city government and present matters directly to the city council. I have no fear that any matter that comes to my committee cannot be handled either up or down. Whatever motion they bring to me, I still retain the power to say no. But I think, more importantly, there is an opportunity to say yes, because I believe that thousands of members of the neighborhood council system have some great ideas that need to be heard by this council more directly, and I think this is an opportunity to make that happen. I encourage you to support the committee report. I would recommend that we send the ethics foreclosure provisions somewhere else for now, but let's not confuse the two issues. This is about empowering neighborhood councils, not disempowering them by tying their hands when they're at the plate.
Thank you. We have 5 council members lined up so far, starting with Councilwoman Janice Hahn. Then we have Greg Smith, Bill Rosendahl, and Dennis Zine.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, Chair of the Education Neighborhood Committees, Richard Alarcon. That was a very articulate speech, which really reflects how I feel. And my dear colleague, Councilmember Rosendahl, I'll never forget, we were sitting right up there. I believe it was before a summer recess. It seemed like it was over 2 years ago that you and I boldly said we agree that neighborhood councils should take the next step in their development and be not only allowed but be encouraged to introduce council files within the city of Los Angeles. And it does seem like it's been a long time coming. I felt like we should have already been 1 year into the pilot program by now, but we're not. And this, of course, the 912 Commission took this up and made this recommendation. I think neighborhood councils all over the city are looking forward to the opportunity to really become engaged in city government. And I, like Richard Alarcon, have no fear of motions that may generate from our neighborhoods. I mean, this is really about a neighborhood's grassroots government, which from the bottom up, that we believe in, that we hold dear as part of our city government. I, too, have been adamant in my opposition
to neighborhood council board members filling out some extensive, intrusive disclosure form just to be given the privilege of introducing a council motion here in this legislative body. I think that's wrong. I think that's misguided. And I, too, would like to separate that from what we're doing today, which is just setting up some guidelines about how neighborhood councils really engage in city government and really come forth with ideas. And that's really all motions are. We all know that. We get an idea. We read something in the paper. We talk to somebody. We think about how to make the city better. And if we don't think that people all over the city also have those ideas, also have those notions on how government might work better, I think the irony of all of this is that, by the time the motion actually comes to fruition, some of mine have languished for 2 years. The original board that introduced it might not even be there anymore. So I think we're really being paranoid to think that we have to put enormous requirements and disclosures on neighborhood councils before they just bring forth good ideas that hopefully will translate to a better government for all the people in Los Angeles. So I would like to agree with Mr. Alarcon, separate the disclosure ethics portion and allow neighborhood councils just to introduce 3 a year with a seconding by another neighborhood council. It's a 2-year pilot program. Let's see how it works. If there's something really broken about it, then in 2 years we can look at amending it. I know my time's over. I actually have some questions on what we're still requiring, because I still have some concerns about the recommendations. So
we'll look forward to that in your second speech. All right, Mr. Smith is next.
Thank you. And to Mr. Alarcon, I want to commend you for putting up with this for a year of your life. I know it was tough. This is not an easy subject. It is sometimes categorized as being anti-neighborhood council. Nothing can be further from the truth. And we said that last year when we voted on this. None of us are opposed to the concept of neighborhood councils introducing files to the council. There are great ideas out there. And I've introduced a number of them on behalf of neighborhood council who have come to me with great ideas. That that's a great idea. Let's do that. This short circuits that and lets them bring it right to us. Great concept in democracy. The problem is the charter established neighborhood council to be advisory in nature. And if we wish to change that rubric and allow them to be a legislative body also, then they need to comply with the rules of law of California. Every elected California representative, whether a city council, a local board, a local commission, a state legislator, a state commission, every one of them must file a financial disclosure law because of openness in government that we believe in California. That's how you stop corruption. I would remind this council that it voted 11-2 to institute a process that would allow neighborhood councils to do that very thing. Do some sort of financial disclosure so we know what is the problem if there is one neighborhood council. We also talked about it last year, that there's been a couple of abuses already that did not come to light by the good wishes of a neighborhood council member who wanted to be truthful, but rather by a press who exposed fraud and abuse in a neighborhood council. One of which a council member in the Valley took $5,000 to promote a zoning case before a neighborhood council, was never disclosed. He never told anybody until the newspaper found out about it. Another case where a company in this city who was negotiating a huge financial deal with this very city council hired a lobbyist to infiltrate neighborhood councils to get support for their company. They were not exposed until it came out in the newspaper. And so to say, let's just trust them is a level of trust that I don't think the people of California want to give. That's why we have these laws. That's why we have ethical laws above and beyond any state in the union. And that should extend to neighborhood councils that want to play in that arena. Now, I've talked to a lot of neighborhood councils who say, we don't want to even do that. We don't care. Don't give us forms. And I say, fine, that's okay. But for those that want to write legislation and introduce it in the city council, why should they not play on the same field we play upon? And that is, you must disclose. Now, when I introduced this last year, this concept, I said, let's use a 700 form. That became a big, big problem. There are problems with the 700 form. I understand that. Mr. Alarcon brought a form forward, and you'll see in my motion 10A, that is basically Mr. Alarcon's form that he brought forward, modified and reduced a little. I took out the financial disclosure 10A. There's 10A and B. 10A is a replacement form, which was Mr. Alicon's form, lightened up a little bit because I took out the dollar amounts that people would have to disclose on personal income. I don't think we need to know that dollar amount. Just tell us who you work for. That's all we need to know. But it lightens up the form. It's a hybrid form of 52, 53, which Mr. Alicon kind of worked on, and it says this is an easier form. I'm not fixated on the form. I wish our ethics department and Bonk had done their job. I believe both commissions failed us miserably. And now we have to fix that. And so the way to fix that is let's just assign the form today. 10A does that. My motion 10B is just a recusal process. It says if you have conflicts, there's a process you go through recusing yourself like we do here. If I have a conflict, Mr. Parks has conflicts because of his role as chief of police, he can't vote on certain things on lawsuits. So he recuses himself. There's a process. That's what 10B does. And then 24A, which we will discuss also, is a substitute motion which really says, let's put this form in, let's do it this way. Ladies and gentlemen, we voted 11-2 to do this last year. Let's not get fixated on which form. Let's fix that issue today. Let's go forward. Let the neighborhood councils finally be an important partner in legislation in the city of LA, but let them play it on the same field that you and I play on, that our commissioners play on. That is the right way to go with a legislative body. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. We have Mr. Rosendahl, then Mr. Zion, Mr. Parks, and then Ms. Hahn and Mr. Alicon for a second time. So, Mr. Rosendahl.
Thank you, Mr. President. Could I ask staff to come on up and people from the commission to come up and sit on the dais? Hold my time. Why don't you all introduce yourself?
Okay. Good morning. My name is Linda Lux. I'm the president of the Board of Neighborhood Commissioners. I'm also the vice president of the Venice Neighborhood Council.
I'm Al Abrams. I'm a commissioner on the Board of Neighborhood Commissioners and also a member of the Tarzana Neighborhood Council.
Good morning. Leanne Pelham, Executive Director of the City Ethics Commission.
Heather Holt, the Director of Policy and Legislation for the City Ethics Commission.
Good morning and happy Korean American Day. Bongwan Kim, General Manager, Department of Neighborhood Empowerment.
I'd like your reactions to what you heard my colleagues and I just speak about on this issue.
Yes,
Linda?
Yes, thank you, Bill. Honorable members of the City Council and Mr. President, thank you for giving us this opportunity to present to you our recommendations on the important issues of financial disclosure and ethics, which we feel are very tied together. In response to President Garcetti's request that we conduct public hearings and provide recommendations to you, we have done that. We held 4 town hall meetings, very heavily attended. We received over 300 surveys that were sent out by the Department of Neighborhood Empowerment. We had both personal and written input from over 400 other members of the public, stakeholders and neighborhood council members. Always keeping in mind the twin goals of transparency and enhanced civic participation, and cognizant always of the budgetary constraints that we all are living under, Bonk really worked very hard to craft an appropriately balanced compromise between those who wanted no financial disclosure for any reason and those who wanted financial disclosure attached to neighborhood council files, and those who wanted some compromise in between. So to that end, we formalized 2 recommendations to you. The first one is the motion to, excuse me?
Yes, Mr. Alicon, do you have a point of information?
She said that she was asked to study whether or not people wanted no disclosure whatsoever. But I believe the question to her was relative to council file motions. It wasn't relative to anything else. So I wanted to make it clear, those people who just because you don't support it for neighborhood council files doesn't mean that you can't support some ethics provisions under general circumstances.
Right. We considered all of that, and we specifically recommended that with the neighborhood council file that you consider a modified Form 52, or another alternative form that you come up with, because we feel it is fair, as Councilman Smith said, that if you're playing on a certain playing field, it's fair to know who these people are. As Councilman Rosendahl said to me, you need to know who people are. It's your decision, of course. Our recommendation is that there be some sort of modified form attached to the neighborhood council file during the 2-year pilot program, and then to see how it goes. That is our recommendation. But with that, we really feel that the mandatory ethics training that is mandatory is not being enforced in any way, shape, or form, and that we really feel that neighborhood council members really mean well. But many times they're not educated. They don't really understand the conflict of interest issues. And if they were required, as they are mandated, and if it were enforced somehow, and incentivized for them to take the conflict of interest training, which is available, unfortunately only in English, but we would like to see it offered in other languages. If that were available in other languages and available to everybody, we feel that 85 to 90% of the conflicts that do arise, and we've all seen them, would basically go away. That would take care of a lot of the problem. In the meantime, during the pilot program, some sort of financial disclosure, if I were a council member, I would want to see, but that is your decision. We're recommending that you consider that. We have no authority as BONC to require the individuals to take the ethics training, but other city departments and you do have that. Our motion number 2 recommends, again, that you have some sort of modified Form 52. Again, we trust our neighborhood council members, but all of us have seen instances of misunderstanding of what the rules are. There's always some people who, whatever the rules are, might want to break them, but that's not the majority of people. Most people just don't get it. And they would get it if they were trained properly. And we want to put teeth in the ethics training as best as possible so that, for example, the city clerk could institute a rule that when you're seated as a neighborhood council member, you must take the ethics training. There's a lot of options that could make it available to all. And we feel that it is tied together. And so we've presented the motions as best we can together as a package, even though you're considering, Councilman Alarcon, just the neighborhood council file issue. We just feel that they're tied, and you
I
can't
appreciate
separate
that.
them.
Could I ask you, gentlemen, on your right to
Yes,
make some comments
Commissioner
quickly?
Abrams.
Good morning. First, I want to thank the commissioners on the Board of Neighborhood Commissioners for some outstanding work over the last 3 months. I want to thank the staff on the Ethics Commission and the City Attorney's Office for outstanding work. You asked specifically, Councilman Rosendahl, what our reaction was to the comments we had heard so far. I take issue, Councilman Smith, that the Ethics Commission and the BONC have not done a great job. I think they've done an outstanding job. And that also goes for the staff of the City Council who have worked very hard on this issue. What you heard this morning is the full spectrum of feelings that we heard in our town hall meetings, that we heard in the public testimony by the different members of the neighborhood councils. We can see right here, right in front of us, the full spectrum of opinions on this. Our goal was to listen, to do surveys, to take testimony and find out where a win-win compromise could be created that would be something positive for all parties involved. So our consideration was enhance and put teeth into training, put them in multiple languages, enhance the online training, do it in person. Let's go out to all the regions, make sure they get it in person if they don't want to do it online. And if 2 neighborhood council boards do indeed want to open a neighborhood council file, that be associated with, for them, a very simple document, form, that is only focused and pertains to the neighborhood council file in question. I think, personally, we have a right to know, because I happen to agree with Councilman Smith that it is the actual beginning of a legislative moment. And a simple file that says, or simple form that says, do you have any conflict, personal, financial, gifts, have to do with this council file, can you please declare them in the same way that if you were on an airplane coming back from Europe, the federal government wants you to declare simply, do you have anything to declare?
What I'd like to do is thank the two citizens for their input. I know this is an extraordinary moment to actually sit at the table and disagree with council members or have opinions of council members rather than sitting on the other side of the mic. And I did that intentionally because the two of you have held 4 town hall meetings. You've wrestled with this issue. And I think the public and my colleagues need to hear what went through your mind. So if I could go to you, Ms. Pellin, and ask you some questions. Leanne, what is the current requirements for neighborhood council board members to complete ethics training? Hold my time.
Neighborhood council board members have a requirement to take an ethics training, which we make available on our website for them. And I believe we have over nearly a couple thousand people who've been tasked with doing that.
And what has been the response from neighborhood council leadership? Have they taken this ethics training?
That council member, I don't have the current numbers for you, so I'm afraid I would have to get back to you on that.
Do you have any sense?
Heather, do you want to?
The department tracks numbers for the neighborhood council board members, and between 06 and 09, a total of 605 elected board members have completed the ethics training.
Mm-hmm. And does that cut across the whole city and all
Yes.
of the neighborhood councils?
Yes.
And what percentage do you think that is of neighborhood council members?
It's roughly, it's less than half total on our board database, which is never accurate because of the turnover of neighborhood council boards is roughly 1,500 total elected board members.
Why less than half? Explain. How can they get away with that?
Well, I think this would be a good opportunity for the city to enforce what really is required, and it is, and this goes back to the ethics issue. It's a state requirement, but there are no sanctions currently in place, if I'm understanding this correctly, for neighborhood councils who don't comply, although it is a state law.
Mm-hmm. Okay, let me just make a comment, and I know other colleagues will want to ask other questions as well. Indeed, Ms. Hahn is right. I was chair of that committee at that moment, or whatever I was, my first new kid on the block here in the council, but I happen to believe in neighborhood councils. I'm a big fan of neighborhood councils. I consider them the first line of the democracy where the people express themselves. I don't necessarily have to agree with them or whatever, but if you believe in the democracy and you believe in citizen participation, you should show respect to the process. And I show respect. I have 8 of them. 6 are affiliated with the city, 2 aren't. But they're people in community who love their community. I go to neighborhood council meetings. My staff goes to neighborhood council meetings. I run issues by my neighborhood councils. I believe they're an important part of the political process. And when it comes to land use issues, where we know so much about what goes on has to do with land use issues, those land use committees, if they're voting on a project that has value and makes bucks for somebody, whoever votes on that should have a disclosure form. The reason they should, because they might be some relative relationship or something else. I don't care if the committee has developers on it or non-developers. It doesn't matter. But if you're going to make a decision on something that affects quality of life, affects community, affects dollars and cents to people, you should show your wallet or show your picture. If you don't want to do it, don't get involved. You know, I have to disclose everything, and I don't mind doing that, and anybody else who wants to do that kind of action should do it. Secondly, I do believe in neighborhood councils having files. I believe they should be part of the political process. I also agree with Mr. Smith that if they have an interest in something, they should recuse themselves and be open and honest about it. Integrity and transparency is what it's all about. So, Mr. Alarcon, as much as I want to separate one from the other, I'm not. If you want to open up council files, you should, if those council files have specific issues that relate to you personally or your extended family, you've got to show that up front or get out of the room and disclose yourself. So I don't know exactly the technical of Mr. Smith's 2 motions, but the drift of it is that if you're going to walk like a duck and quack like a duck, you've got to be treated like a duck. I mean, come on, let's be straight about this whole situation. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. Mr. Zine is our next speaker.
Man, you're going after. Oh, here we go. Good morning.
Good morning.
Quack like a duck. That's good. I sit on this committee with Mr. Alarcon, who's looking for my support on this measure, and I'm going to support that. I believe there's 2 separate issues, and we're going to hear 15 people. Hopefully, we come with a consensus. I believe that all neighborhood council representatives need to fill out some form. I think there's been some scandals. I don't know how much enforcement ethics does or how much follow-up there is, but if you're elected to an office, whether it be neighborhood council or city council, whatever, there should be some financial requirement and posting, maybe not as extensive as we have, but there should be some. You take that oath, you're going to be a neighborhood council member, you do that. That's separate. As far as the file, to me that's separate. Let them go with the file. We have restrictions on that, how many they can do, the consensus that has to be built, but keep them separate. And I think that Mr. Alarcon had an idea that the matter of the financial disclosure would go back to committee. We'd figure out how to make that happen. And if they don't want to do that, then maybe they shouldn't run for neighborhood council. And if they do want to run for neighborhood council, keep them separate, do the file, move forward with that, take this other matter back, work with Ethics Commission, work with the Department of Neighborhood Empowerment, and figure out what's going to work for the community. Janice Hahn and I were both members of the Charter Commission. When we envisioned neighborhood councils, we had no vision of $50,000 or any compensation. We believed that they would be like existing homeowners, Tarzana property owners, Sherman Oaks homeowners. They've been in existence for many, many years. They've worked extremely well. They haven't been required to fill out anything, and they've gotten the job done. But once we get involved with money, then it becomes a whole different issue. When it comes to the files, the motions, etc., it becomes a complex, the Brown Act and this and that and the other. When we had the Charter Commission, we had it real simple. Ground forces, grassroots, get them involved, have them be part of the system. But it's gotten so convoluted and so technical and so sophisticated, where we have the Ethics Commission, Department of Neighborhood Empowerment, all these other factors, and a lot of people in the community, and we have some representatives here, all they want to do is represent their community. That's all they want to do, nothing else. And they have other jobs. Pardon me, Janice? They have other jobs, other interests, but they want to be stakeholders in their community, and I totally support that. So I'm going to support Mr. Alarcon and Ms. Hahn that we keep them separate. I support my colleague, Greg Smith, in 99% of the things that we do, but I think this matter has to be separate and move down that path. And whatever form we come up with, it'll pass the muster, and I think there should be some follow-up through Department of Environment and through Ethics Commission to make sure there's compliance. If we do something, let's get some compliance with it to make sure it's clean all around for everyone's benefit. So that'll be my vote. That'll be my support. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Zine. Mr. Parks is our next speaker.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just have 3 or 4 points I'd like to make. First of all, I agree with, I think, the body and consistent that neighborhood councils should have the ability to have council files. But I think that even though we may not agree with it, I think when we impose the Brown Act on the neighborhood councils, they become more than just a community group that sits around and has a discussion. And the fact that we now are talking about legislative files, they take on another activity that I think actually requires them to put forth the proper information as to their background, their understanding of their conflict of interest, and so those forms are important. The other issue I think is that I would like to see something less cumbersome in the sense of not having them have to go out to several or an additional neighborhood council to get endorsement of a council file. I think it would be sufficient for them just to get a unanimous vote of their board. And I think with that, you would have the unanimous vote of the board that would move it forward. I think also we should not use the triggering mechanism of when you create a file that you must have the form. I think everybody that's elected as a board member should fill out the form. And then it's on file, it's identified, everybody knows it's there, they know the requirements. You get a unanimous vote of your board, you bring forth a file, it goes to the appropriate committee, it gets reviewed. But I think also in looking at the file, and again, I don't believe the 700 form would be appropriate, but somewhere that mix between the 53 and the 54 are forms that moderate the requirements and the information, but gives you necessary information to deal with. And I certainly agree with Mr. Smith that you have to have the ability to recuse yourself. If you don't understand the issue of the conflict of interest, then you need to make sure that you're studying that annual report and whatever we require them on the ethics form, but that they need to understand that they are not just sitting around in a community room at a coffee klatch talking about issues of the community. They are formally moving forward, and as they come to the council, they're not shy about saying, I represent the neighborhood council. The issue is if they're going to be in that formalized sense, it's taken a step beyond advisory. They're now inserting themselves into land use. They're inserting themselves into policy. They're pulling together campaigns in some instances about city issues. So therefore, if they are moving in that direction, we should have certain requirements that they abide by. But I think that the issue clearly, they should have the right to have the files. I think they should have the right to get their board to approve them. But I think their board has to tell us who they are, who they represent, who might be sponsoring them. And I think the issue is we do need to have a modified form so that people are aware, and it's on file, public record, just as all that we do.
Thank you, Ms. Gruhl is our next speaker. Ms. will speak very close to the microphone. Yes. Ms. Gruhl has lost her voice, so.
I have a question. Yeah. Sorry. Item 24, shouldn't that be with this as well?
There's a move just to do 10 and 11 together right now.
Okay.
They do relate, and some people have referred to it, but there was a move to just do 10 and 11 first.
Okay, and Mr. Alarcon is asking us to do just council files, and then the second piece would be the neighborhood council recusal. Is that correct?
The second part is just disclosure, not linked to the files. It's about disclosure forms in general.
If Bob could just tell us again what their recommendation is, and you've given us a form that I say that you've drafted. That's an alternate form, correct? Okay.
Okay.
So if you could just tell us what the recommendation is.
Bonk is recommending a modified financial form 52, particularly page 2 of the form 52, if you have it. It is less onerous than the entire form 52. It's a pretty much of an outline. Do you have a copy of it? Here. Okay. It's a draft of it, and it basically it has some changes to the original 52. If you want to see a copy of it, there's also other proposals, but we are recommending, based on everything that we have done and the hundreds of people we have spoken to, that this would be a less onerous, acceptable form, modified 52, page 2, which would set forth your name, your spouse's or registered domestic partner's name, the name of your neighborhood council, your employers, your spouse's or registered domestic partner's employers, any real estate in or within 1,000 feet of the affected neighborhood council file. And it relates specifically to neighborhood council files and any businesses that you have that relates to the neighborhood council file. We did not take up, nor did we recommend across the board financial disclosure. We did not go there. We dealt specifically with the neighborhood council file pilot program issue.
And
Okay,
just
does
to
that answer
clarify,
your question?
And just to clarify further, the 52 is tied to the council file. 53 would be system-wide.
Right. Thank you. We did not recommend 53. We recommended 52 with the neighborhood council file.
So, there's disclosure if you have a council file, disclosure just if you're on a neighborhood council, which I'm not in favor of.
And we did not recommend that as well.
Okay. And what Jill Branksborough put forward, I think, was also a good document for us to look at as well. Sorry, I apologize. And if you could comment on Jill's the Valley Alliance.
What we have with Ms. Barad's document and Len Schaefer's document is the philosophy of let's let each neighborhood council member just provide a written testament, a letter, an affidavit, thank you, that basically says, I have no conflict of interest with the neighborhood council file that I am submitting, signed, dated, signatured.
Do you do that for each council file, or do you just do it in the beginning?
I think it would have to do with each submitted council file separately, if I'm correct.
Now, understand, we didn't make that recommendation, but as individuals, we don't have a problem with that particular approach. That is not something our board voted on.
And the other thing I
But
want
it
to
makes
bring
sense.
up, which is very important, we were very cognizant of the city's budget situation, and we wanted to craft a compromise that did not impose too much hardship financially on the city. Because when you think about 1,600 individuals on an annual basis that would have to file a general financial disclosure statement, now we're opening the door to who does it, where is it stored, how is it maintained, that adds, I think, a degree of cost to it that we just didn't feel was necessary at this time. And also, we didn't want to impose that as a general financial disclosure form on all the neighborhood council members.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Labange. Is our next speaker.
Thank you very much. Members, I'm looking for the two people at the end of this table to solve the problem, to make it easier for the people in the middle and the people out there to move forward on this here. Some mentioned that there have been some problems. Have you known of any problems? Or does anyone know any problems? I want to ask the ethics director. As the general manager, has there been any problems with anybody in our system of neighborhood councils in the last 6 years that have brought to the attention?
We haven't officially tracked it, but we did an informal scan amongst our staff about how neighborhood councils generally handled conflict of interest.
No. Has there been a problem where someone, what you would think, violated the law or acted unethically?
Anecdotally, there is evidence that there have been some issues.
But anecdotally, you as general manager, you should be more than anecdotally. You should know this. I'm counting on you and your staff to solve this problem. I'm counting on you and your staff to make it easy to participate in neighborhood councils. I always count on the Ethics Commission to act independently, as they do for a variety of assignments they have. But I need the department to not be anecdotal. If there's a problem, I don't think this city, this council, the city attorney, anybody would want to say anecdotally somebody in XYZ neighborhood council is acting improperly. I think we should have some, way. I do believe that if anyone wanted to say, I want to involve in my neighborhood, just like we have at our rec centers, we have advisory groups, just like we have at our libraries, Friends of Libraries, just the simplest of all forms to do that. But if someone is there in what would be disgracing the integrity of the democratic process of people participating, we should have to figure it out. There is a suggestion to split this, Mr. President, and some of this go back to committee. Is that correct?
There is nothing on the table to do that.
That is on the table.
All that we're doing is taking up 10 and 11 right now, and the only other thing on the table have been the amending motions from Mr. Smith.
Good, but 10 and 11, and I just got a little more time here on this here. Our ethics director, what would you like to see in this here? If you were sitting where I'm sitting.
Thank you, Councilmember. Just to answer your question that you posed to the General Manager of Dunn, the Neighborhood Council structure in the city was not designed to have the Neighborhood Council board members at this time subject to the governmental ethics laws. There are conflicts of interest laws under state that board members are subject to, but they are not subject to the city's ethics laws. So the Ethics Commission does not have reach or jurisdiction to address those issues. And I'll let our policy director, Heather Holt, speak to the specifics of our recommendation. I would just say very briefly, by way of background, that and again, in a bit of a contrast to what Councilmember Smith indicated earlier, our commission's very seriously and very closely looked at this issue. And our general policy goal has been to try and balance the burdens of disclosure and the burdens that come with transparency with the benefits that come with transparency that would maximize the confidence of citizenry in the neighborhood council process. And so in this process, our view has been that because the neighborhood councils are advisory at this point, that we did not think that a Form 700 type disclosure was as appropriate at the present time. That seemed to be too much of a burden for a process where we're trying to encourage citizen participation. That said, the Commission also considered recent recommendations by Bonk to look at a slightly amended version of what we had initially proposed, and the Commission, on balance, felt still comfortable with their initial recommendations, our initial recommendations. But I think on the spectrum of things, it is quite fair to say that what Bonk has recommended is significantly removed from a Form 700 level of disclosure that the Commission, I think, would generally be supportive of. Right. And I'll leave details to our approach to Ms. Holt to speak to if you'd find that helpful.
I can just use a little analogy. I want to improve the quality of life for everyone in Los Angeles. I want to improve the property value for everyone in Los Angeles. Okay. No, I do that too, Richard. I also want to improve the situation in my neighborhood. Okay. But in my neighborhood, I'm disqualified from dealing with my particular block. If the city attorney could correct me on that and hold my time. On zoning issues on my block that I live on, I can't deal with it because there's a conflict there. But on anything else in the neighborhood, I can try to make it better, which will have an effect for everybody. See, I want to try to separate that. Maybe the specialist in policy. Do you want to voice some concern? Hold my time.
Yes, I would agree with that, and that was one of the things that the Commission considered in drafting Form 52 and Form 53, and excluded things like personal residences and limited the geographic reach of those forms to either the Neighborhood Council District for Form 53 or to the City for Form 52.
Now, if I'm a real estate agent and I belong to the Los Angeles Neighborhood Council for the betterment of neighborhoods, and I advertise that I'm a neighborhood council member and I'll solve your problem, do you think that could be a problem?
If that is a source of income for you, it could pose a financial conflict of interest,
But we don't know that to be the case any which way.
unless there's disclosure on that front.
Right. Anyway, I want to make it easy for people to walk through these doors to testify. I want to make it easy for people to go into neighborhood schoolhouses and to testify and do it. So I need a little better help there, but I do believe there's some, what Mr. Smith says does have some very focused on it, but I still haven't found that point yet, Mr. Smith, yet. I still agree with Ms. Hahn in this wide spectrum there, and I need a little more from you as the department head to say who's in the department watching, not anecdotally, and then bring it to the attention. What would you bring it to the attention if it was a problem? If you found XYZ neighborhood council was a problem, would you bring it to the attention of the Ethics Commission or the Police Department or the City Clerk?
Well, currently there isn't policies in place for sanctions for people who don't, for one, complete their ethics requirement. So I think that's one thing.
No, someone, let's say, violates the ethics and does something wrong. What do? XYZ Neighborhood Council has a member who has a cousin who is involved with paving, and they repave a street with money for the Neighborhood Council with a direct solicitation to that contractor. That's an example. It's not true, but that's an example. What would you do? It's anecdotal, to borrow your term. Thank you, Ms. Hunt.
Right. Well, just the reality check in terms of resources and the number of neighborhood councils. I just need to remind you that there are 90 neighborhood councils.
That doesn't answer the question, so you really got to step up, because I'm counting on you to say, on that particular one, what would you do? Because it makes me want to say...
And after that, Mr. LeBon, if you'll press your button again.
Just to clarify, our primary role is advisory, and we don't really enforce policies in the neighborhood councils. So we would need to work with the bank and the city council to really focus on what kinds of sanctions does the council believe would be necessary in these cases.
That's all I'm asking.
Thank you. We have Ms. Perry next.
Thanks, Mr. President. Tom, just in response to your last comment or question, actually, about finding neighborhood councils where there have been problems, I've had a long history of issues in the southern part of the district that have been well documented and taken quite a while to achieve decertification in certain cases. While I do have some good ones, which I do mention, Can Do, Voices of 90037, D-Lank, HCNC, I've come a number of times in the chamber, said it on the record, asked for help on dealing with issues, one, for example, which was decertified where, I was personally at a meeting that I hosted where neighborhood council had stockpiled 3 years of money. I think they were at $150,000, and and I explained to members who were there from an organized criminal activity that their neighborhood council had been denying them that opportunity to participate in the process. They all went out into the parking lot and settled it. That's just one example. I can give you many, many more examples if you're interested, but I don't want to waste time on that. I think when people have good intentions, they don't mind filling out a form. They don't mind providing some basic information about what their intentions are. I think forms, just like for elected officials, just like for anybody, protect people from themselves, screen enough so that people who have poor intentions or bad intentions will then push away from the table. If what you want to do is good and on behalf of the community, you won't have a problem with filling out a form as proposed by Mr. Smith today. It's not a big deal. It's not onerous. It's not burdensome. I don't think as elected officials it's too much for us to ask for somebody to just give us some basic information, especially when you're handling public money or be given the privilege to open a council file. It's just basic decency that we would expect from ourselves to put something on the record so that we can demonstrate to the taxpayers that we are being diligent and making a public record that is transparent and as accessible. And if somebody feels discouraged from doing that, then I would question their motives in the first place, and I think that that's okay to question their motives if they don't want to do those forms. But I think it's fine. They're basic forms, simple, pared down, user-friendly, much less complex than what we have to do. But I think it's a good compromise, and I think on 10 and 11 as amended, I'm going to support that.
Mr. Cardenas.
Thank you. Mr. Kim, I think it's important for you to have the opportunity to clarify when a policymaker of the city asks you to step up and come on, get involved or what have you, and you're forced to answer questions and be honest and say, well, I can give you an anecdotal answer, because that's really, right now, not what our mandate is, meaning you and the people that work for you. So if you were to take on more responsibilities and or policy-wise be more of an enforcer rather than an advisor to neighborhood councils, would that mean you would need directive from a policy body like us to tell you what you need to be doing, and then you would have to let us know what resources it would take for you to implement that?
I believe our approach has always been, as a supporter, our authority largely as written in the plan in terms of sanctions against neighborhood councils who experience conflicts of interest would be tied to the neighborhood council funding program. I have taken actions when there have been cases where neighborhood councils have abused public funds, where we have frozen the funds. Another approach that the department takes is decertification. And while that is really the last straw, a neighborhood council who continues to experience dysfunctional behavior and misuse of public funds and the public trust, we would bring a recommendation to our Board of Neighborhood Commissioners, and we have decertified neighborhood councils who haven't maintained the public trust.
Would somebody like to help clarify something?
And with the ethics requirement, go ahead.
Yeah, let me just clarify. Gwen Poindexter, Assistant City Attorney. The ethics and conflict of interest rules are state law. They're under the government code, and the Department of Empowerment does not enforce those rules. If there's going to be any penalties or fines, it would be the Fair Political Practices Commission or the District Attorney's Office. So it really is not in the Department's jurisdiction.
Unless we added some responsibility to the Ethics Commission?
If the city's ethics ordinance were to apply to the neighborhood council board members, say for instance because they were required to file a Form 700, then they would be subject to the city's ethics laws, and we would have enforcement authority for those particular issues. But the state, I think what Ms. Poindexter is saying is because it's state law, that can't be vested in the Ethics Commission as a local agency.
But we can always, at the local level, adopt our subset of requirements above and beyond state law, or mirroring state law, and then perhaps doing something in addition to that here locally, right? But that's what we do with our council members and elected officials in the city of Los Angeles. There's FPPC, and we have city ethics. And city ethics asks the elected officials of the city of Los Angeles to fill out more forms than the basic forms that FPPC requires us to fill out, correct? So we could, in effect, do that in this case with neighborhood councils if we required some kind of disclosure or what have you. Then instead of Bonk being the ones to receive these, or if they received them, they could immediately forward them over to the Ethics Commission, where they would have the jurisdiction of enforcement, correct? And I use the word could. Obviously, we would have to implement policy and write it as such, correct?
It all depends on how a law like that would be written.
Yeah, but laws like that can be written. It's not like somebody's raising their hand saying the charter won't allow it, so moot point, guys, stop talking.
Right.
It's not the point at all. We are embarking on a dialogue that could end up with policy requiring disclosure requirements of neighborhood council members that don't exist today. We could impose that with a motion of this council, of hopefully properly written and clearly written, and then therefore those disclosure requirements would be required.
Right.
Correct? Yes. Everybody? Yeah. Sure.
If I may just jump in, I want to keep your focus also on the mandatory ethics training, because I really believe that the majority of the problems that arise are because people haven't taken the training. And there are no sanctions at this point. We, as a Board of Neighborhood Commissioners, is interested in creating more sanctions, using the carrot and the stick, incentivizing, but also if people don't do it by a certain point, they can't serve, they can't vote on expending city funds or land use issues. we are moving and working with the city ethics and the city clerk to find those mechanisms, but we may be coming back to you to say, okay, at some point, we need some change in the ordinance to say, take the ethics, you can't serve. It's fair. It's reasonable to expect people to have the same knowledge base in terms of what's conflict of interest and what's ethical.
Sure, having a basic standard of awareness.
Exactly.
And that's good, especially for the kind of people that were described earlier, just innocent folk that just want to help out their neighborhood. The last thing you want is to see somebody like that totally accidentally get themselves into a legal bind and embarrass their name in public or what have you. And all they were trying to do is just be a helpful person to their community.
Thank you.
Would probably get people to want to run away from being helpful to their community and not get formally involved. I could see that, and that's something I certainly wouldn't want to encourage. But at the same time, somebody pointed out that when neighborhood councils were created, that they were designed to be advisory. But at the same time, with all due respect, if neighborhood councils want to go beyond being advisory and get formally involved and have a formal, not seat at the table, but a formal access point in which they can petition the council formally, where the council is forced or required to take up those items, then in fact you're actually expanding that. And with that expansion does come with responsibilities. And in this case, one of the forms of that responsibility, we're talking about disclosure. I am all for increasing disclosure and awareness.
But, excuse me, I just have to make one correction, Councilman Cardenas, is that the NC File program that you're contemplating does not force or require the City Council to take the matter up at a particular meeting.
No, excuse me, not at a particular meeting, but once that action would be taken as described in this dialogue, then what would the council be required to do?
There's no requirement. It basically just sets up, and the city clerk can explain that a little further, but it just basically sets up what's called a neighborhood council file, and it's within the discretion of the city council president what happens from there on out with the file. It doesn't mandate any particular action by any council committee or by the city council as currently proposed.
Well, if that's the case, if you don't mind, if the city clerk can clarify, if a council member creates a motion or what have you, is the council required to take up that motion?
No, Karen Kalfayan, the interim city clerk. The neighborhood council files, once they're created, would be treated like any other council file.
That's my point. Excuse me, City Attorney, you're absolutely right. That's my point. If a city council creates a file, just like Janice Hahn, if you did, or I did, or Richard did, or what have you, it would be treated the same from that point. And therefore, they've pierced themselves from being what they are today, and they are now more like we are here, but as a group, not as an individual. I'll push my button again.
Thank you. Mr. Reyes is next.
Thank you, Council President. Colleagues, I've been hearing and intently listening to this discussion, and I have found myself in a place where, in one particular neighborhood council, there was an individual who was in charge of a committee, who had known gang affiliations, who had been known for intimidation, and essentially created a lot of havoc in that one council. Now, I believe with disclosure, we will create another safety point, another safety check, another way in which we could help facilitate an environment where we know that the actions of certain folks are real, and there are no hidden agendas, there are no affiliations to the sub-economy, and that there is a reason to provide that level of security. So I wholeheartedly stand and support Councilmember Smith. In an ideal society, we would wish no one had to provide these kinds of disclosure statements. But in many of our neighborhoods who are beginning to mature, who are now beginning to get past that point in which they are no longer fearing the gang element, or those who would want to take advantage of those who are not informed, this is the kind of security we need. So I hope we take to heart that many neighborhoods still in the process of maturation, leadership is beginning to rise. I believe we will achieve our goals, but we do need these security measures. And I believe this forum is that type of tool that will make these characters and unscrupulous folks think twice before they try to take advantage of our city, of our communities, of our neighborhoods. So I will be supporting Councilmember Smith. Thank you.
Ms. Hahn is next, and then Mr. Alarcon, Mr. Smith.
Thank you.
and Mr. LeBon.
It's too much for me, but I would like you to hold my time while we have the city clerk exactly describe what we're talking about here. Exactly what does it mean for a neighborhood council to introduce a council file? Pure and simple. Hold my time, please.
Okay. What introducing a council file would mean is that the neighborhood councils would be able to bring something to the council just as a city department does now, as a council member does through a motion, and so on. The procedure that we've kind of structured is that once a neighborhood council determines that they want to bring something to the city council, they would have to follow certain requirements. They would have to what we did is as I said, we came up with a structure. They would fill out a form. It would indicate what the action is that they want. It would show that there was a board action that was taken, so it's an official action of the neighborhood council. It would summarize the background and the recommendations, the funding impact, and so on, just as any other report would do. And they would submit that to the city clerk. Now, if there's going to be a requirement for some sort of disclosure form.
No, I'm not just saying.
Okay.
I'm just saying. And then what happens
And
when
then
it comes to the city clerk?
Once it comes to the city clerk, that package would again be treated like any other council file. It would be assigned a council file number. It would be referred to the appropriate committee, and then the committee, and then eventually the council would take that up and discuss or debate the issue.
Would it come in the form of a motion like what we do on the city council, or what form does this come in?
I would imagine it would most likely come in the form of an action that the board would take.
Let's not be anecdotal. Let's just take something specific so we all know what we're talking about. Let's say neighborhood council wanted to initiate that there was an MOU between the Department of Transportation and neighborhood councils. What would that look like on this form?
Well,
would it be therefore I move, or is it coming in a different?
Well, they would probably have an action that summarized what they wanted to do.
Okay, they would like us to initiate.
And then actually, they could submit a report. They could put that in whatever form they want. But what we would want to see is that their board actually took a formal action, so that is an official action of the board, and they're bringing it forward.
So they would like an MOU between the Department of Transportation and neighborhood councils. So that would come to you with, we took this action, here's the background, we think we don't have a good relationship with the Department of Transportation, we think there should be an official MOU. Funding source, I think that's a bit of a tough requirement for a neighborhood council to understand what the funding source would be for that.
Well, and again,
it would come to you, and you would give it to the president of the city council?
Well, what we usually do is we refer things on his behalf. It would depend on the subject matter.
It might go straight to
it could go to any committee depending on the subject matter.
And then at that point, it would be maybe the chair of transportation would ask for a report back. So it would be, that's how it would come.
Right, and then it would take on a similar track as any other kind of file that might go to a committee.
Okay. I think colleagues, again, in my opinion, having neighborhood councils introduce ideas on what they would like to see at city government does not put them into a category of being the legislative body. Just because it's treated the same as our ideas doesn't mean it puts them in another category. I would dispute that. They are still advisory. They have not become legislative. That idea may never make it. It might get into a committee, and the committee decides, as sometimes they do with all of it's not really worth pursuing. And that could still happen. So it really hasn't put them in another category. I am still feel very strongly that we don't need to have any more disclosure for them to come forward with an idea. And I would like Ms. Poindexter to describe again what council members, neighborhood council members are under in terms of state law, in terms of ethics, disclosure, and conflict of interest. Hold my time.
Gwen Poindexter again. They are subject to the rules of the state law, even though they are currently exempted by this council from filling out Form 700, but they're still subject to all the conflict of interest rules under the Political Reform Act, as well as Government Code 1090, which basically requires them to be aware of their financial interests, and if they have a financial interest in a matter that's coming before them, then they would be possibly required to recuse themselves from any participation of that action, depending upon our analysis.
Right.
And our office is available to assist neighborhood councils to advise them on whether they need to recuse themselves or not, depending upon the facts that they present to us. We've also given training on that topic to neighborhood councils.
I think, council members, that is what we need to realize. They are under the state law that says if they have a conflict of interest, they need to recuse themselves from whatever action is being taken. That would include an action to introduce a council file. I would submit that Jill Barad has the perfect solution. This is a declaration that says they have participated in ethics classes in person or online, and they are aware of the perceived financial or personal interest in the subject matter of this board action. That would be any board action. And they're aware that if they have a conflict of interest, they must recuse themselves. That's all we need to know from our neighborhood councils. They don't need to fill out a form. They don't need to disclose personal property, loans. I just don't think that's information any of us need to have to know who's being involved in their neighborhood. What the neighborhood councils need to do is take the ethics training. We need to make that more mandatory than voluntary. Then they need to fill out this beautiful declaration to say they've done it, they understand they're under the state law. If they have a personal conflict of interest, they need to recuse themselves from any board action. Not just council files. That is the answer to this. It makes it easy. It makes it simple. We don't need to fear people who are getting involved in our neighborhoods. I don't think there's been major scandals associated with neighborhood councils. I dare say there are more scandals that happen around this horseshoe than in all the neighborhood councils in the city. I think we're putting something on them that is unnecessary and important. I think on item 10, I would like to make sure we vote for the committee report, which is no financial disclosure involved with the council file. But then let's talk about if you want another disclosure, a once-a-year disclosure form. But in terms of council files, let's do a 2-year pilot program. Let's see how it works. And more importantly, let's make sure everybody takes the ethics training and then signs that declaration to say they've taken it, they understand they're under the same laws that we are, and there are serious consequences to violating that. But in terms of finding out their domestic partners' loans and real estate interests, that is not necessary in coming forth with ideas that make the City of Los Angeles a better place to live and work.
Our next speaker is Mr. Alarcon.
City Clerk, if you would hold my time, I have a series of questions to ask of Bong. In your survey, did you ask the question whether or not they would support no disclosure?
Yes, we did, and the vast majority...
Do you have a copy of the survey? Because I don't believe that's true.
We don't have the survey with us, but we have the results of the survey.
No, his point is whether or not there was an actual question.
Okay, one second.
There it is.
Yeah, you got it?
Yeah.
Okay, you want to read it?
What is the question?
According to the results we have, I'm just going to give you percentages, or do you want the raw numbers as well?
No, I want to know about the question that asked, do you prefer no disclosure?
We have in favor of financial disclosure 39%, opposed to financial disclosure 61%.
Okay, but that was in context of Form 52 and 53. 52 would be financial disclosure relative to introducing council file motions. 53 was relative to disclosure of all members. It had nothing to do with whether or not you wanted no disclosure on introducing council files. Where's that question?
Here's the question, sir. I have the
Please.
survey. Question number 5. Should board members be required to disclose financial interests? Yes or no?
But it's relative to 52.
No, it was just a general question. It was not relative to 52. It was a general question. And then it went on, if you said yes, please provide your opinion of the following. Statement 1, I'm in favor of 52.
So that's only for the people who said yes.
52, 53, or 700, they were asked, and then they had other.
But that's only for the people who said yes.
Yes.
So you really don't know if the neighborhood council members support 52 or 53.
Well, we have
No,
the
we didn't
data
ask
on
that
this.
question.
We didn't ask the specific
All you know is that the people who said yes to that previous question support
52, 53, 700,
now,
or
does
other.
your survey include the 54, which is the item, the amendment that Councilman
No, we
Smith?
didn't have that at this time.
Okay, so we don't know what they would say about that,
No,
and
we
I can
don't.
tell you as the guy who wrote it, or pretty much all of it, they didn't like it. That's why they hammered me in the City Watch. And I suggest to all of you, if you want to welcome City Watch's comments about your vote for the amendment. But I think that is a bad way to make policy. So the bottom line is that your survey did not include a specific question that said, would you prefer introducing neighborhood council files with no disclosure requirement? Yes or no?
No.
Okay, so I say that's an invalid survey. They did not ask the question. How could we know what the neighborhood councils think? Was there public testimony at your hearings?
Many. Hundreds.
And how many people there said they wanted no disclosure if they had to introduce council files? Because some of them were in the room, I should remind you.
191.
The majority of people
absolutely.
said
Yes.
they did not want disclosures tied to the council files.
That's correct.
Yes, 191.
And yet your testimony was that you surveyed them and they liked your... Come on. The reality is the neighborhood councils would like to have the power to introduce council files without the burden of having to fill out an additional neighborhood or additional disclosure form. That's the bottom line. Let me tell you this. I used to write exams for the city of Los Angeles, as many of you know, write police exams. And I can tell you, if you want to hamper people's opportunities to participate, if you want to block minorities from getting a certain classification of a job, you impose a master's degree as a requirement for that job. If you want to block women, you pick they have to have more experience because they don't have the experience. This is nothing more than a blocking of the opportunity of the neighborhood council system to participate at a level that they would like to participate. And so I am asking you once and for all, let's move past the neighborhood council file issue. And guess what? If we had done this last year, we'd be halfway done. So I urge you to support the committee recommendation to allow us to do a pilot project with the neighborhood council files. If we have issues that come up from that, I'm happy to hear them from you and modify the program moving forward. I don't believe there will be any, but I'm happy to take your recommendations. That we not vote in favor of Councilman Smith's motion to accept a form that I wrote that I don't even like, and that we move forward simply to allow the neighborhood council system to do what I believe it was always intended to do, and that's participate in city government.
Mr. Smith.
Well, thank you, and I appreciate that admonition that you don't like it either because you wrote it and you didn't like it. That's a classic. First of all, let me apologize to the Commission. I never intended to impugn the activity and the work you did. I'm very grateful of all you did to try and resolve this. I was concerned and unhappy that there was no resolution brought forward and say, here's the package we think you should have. It was a broad-based approach to here's some ideas, and that's where I think we weren't given what we wanted today. So it's up to us now to resolve that today. To Mr. Alarcon's suggestion, let's just pass the one part and leave the other. That, again, delays it. Mr. Labange asked the question, what happens if someone violates the rules? Well, without a form, you don't know they violated the rules, and you cannot enforce. He said right now, we can't enforce. So, sorry, that's what they said. We need to do it. Let me give you an example to Mr. Labange's question, has there been any abuses? And I told you of a couple abuses. I'm going to tell you about a neighbor council in my district. And Mr. Labange, this is for you. There's a neighbor council in my district. I shall not say the name. If you want to know the name, I'll give it to you. Neighbor council was looking at a zone case, dealing with a school, a private school. What happened was the private school decided that they weren't happy with the trouble they were getting in the neighborhood council. What did they do? The entire administration from the school ran for the board, brought everybody from the PTA down, they swamped the neighborhood council, took everybody out of the neighborhood council, elected their board of directors, many of which don't even live in the city of LA, were serving on that board. They overturned everything that was done by the previous neighborhood council, approved the zone change, and said to the planning administrator, we approve the school, it's a good idea. 6 months later, they all resigned. What happened? Nothing. But what happened to me was, I knew what was going on. But I knew. You don't know necessarily. And if there's no form to know people's involvement, how would they know? I knew who those people were. That was because I was informed what was going on. You don't always know that. BFI, case in point, the case I brought up. BFI hired a lobbyist 2 years ago to infiltrate neighborhood councils, to get neighborhood councils to support the contract before this council. A contract that was so badly written that this council threw it out and told the city attorney to rewrite it because it was costing the city millions of dollars. BFI subjected the entire neighborhood council process to corruption. Nobody knew that until a newspaper person found out about it. I didn't know about it. People who represented those districts didn't know about it. That's what the form does. It puts out there a basic form. Now, none of us like the form. Hey, I tell the state of California, we don't like the form. We don't want to fill it out either. But that's not the case. The law is the law. If you want open government, this is the way to provide open government. To break this apart today into two parts does nothing but delay a process which allows us to see what is going on and to allow our neighborhood council director and the people that watch them to bring about change and bring about something that if people violate the law, they can be punished for that. You don't know that if you don't have these forms. You can only hear about it if somebody else happens to know about it. That is always not the case. And so I say to you folks, this is the best way to go. When you did your survey, it was 61-39. 39% of the neighborhood council people that talked or answered your survey said, we think there should be a form. No one, which form is irrelevant at this moment, but there should be a form. That says that 39% of the people, probably the ones that had neighborhood council problems like the one I just described, where people have abused the neighborhood council system to promote their own ideas. I think we need a form. I think CEC Form 54, which I proposed in 10A, will give us that form that can be used. It's an ethics form. It's not a state form. It is a reduction from Mr. Alarcon's form he didn't like. I made it better, so it's okay. And finally, the admission of the staff was that less than half the people have even taken the ethics training. If people are so insincere about the importance of ethics that they aren't even taking the form voluntarily, taking the test voluntarily, I think we need a really regulated system that says you will do this and you will report to us what your financial involvement is before you vote on anything. And if you're involved, you recuse yourself. And the only way to do that is in an open public policy forum like we have as elected officials, and they should have as elected officials as well if they want to introduce legislation.
Thank you. I think we had a clarification for the city attorney. No, I think that was already clarified. Mr. Labange?
Just to ask the city clerk, just one clarification. I introduce a motion right now, and it's an issue. It goes to a committee. It may sit there forever and dissolve in 2 years. That's correct?
That's correct.
Okay. The Greater Griffith Park Neighborhood Council, this is approved, may issue a motion, and it may direct it to a committee, and it may sit there and dissolve in 2 years.
Well, theoretically, that could happen, yes.
No, that's the same. I mean, that's the same as what happens to me, what happens to them. And everybody absolutely knows that. Do all you in the neighborhood council know that? You absolutely know that. It's just an introduction in the door, if you could say that. Now, you're smiling, so I just want to ask Karen, because I do empower and believe in empowering people in all this process here. But is there anything I should know?
About the...
Yeah, what we just talked about?
No, I think that you're correct. And as a neighborhood council file would be handled the same way any other file is handled. It would be referred to a committee, and the committee chair can choose when to
It
schedule
doesn't get
that.
referred to city council, it gets referred through city council.
To a committee.
Yeah, it doesn't ever come directly to city council, it goes directly to a committee.
I think most of these would be referred to a committee. I mean, there are instances of files that go directly to council, but I don't think these would fall into that
But
type of
should
a
we
category.
clarify that now so we don't get any false
I mean,
hope?
I think these would be handled like a departmental request that would be referred.
Okay. And let me ask the city attorney representing the neighborhood councils. If you're aware or made aware at a meeting or someone comes to this commission's hearing and says they feel there's something doing wrong in some neighborhood, in a neighborhood council, what is the procedure?
Well, we've encouraged our neighborhood council board members, the individual members, Gwen Poindexter, to call our office to seek advice. I have 3 attorneys assigned to all the regions, and they're assigned to specific neighborhood councils. And if there is a problem or a question about whether they should be acting on a particular matter, they should contact our individual city attorney, who will discuss the matter with them and give them the appropriate advice.
Would you intercept it before they would take a vote?
We don't intercept because we don't staff those meetings because we don't have the number of attorneys to do so.
What would take place there? I mean, is there any liability opening to the city in this at all?
It depends on the case. I mean, the liability is really for the individual neighborhood council board member because they are subject to investigation by, as I said before, the Fair Political Practices Commission, the district attorney's office. Whether that happens, in fact, I can't say, can't speak to those agencies. But our job, as it is with respect to any other entity, with yourselves, the city council members and the boards, is to provide the legal advice to the client with the hope that you'll comply with that advice. I mean, our interest is to protect the board member as well from violating any of the laws.
Right. And does department staff, I could ask the general manager, are they briefed on what to do if they feel something is wrong or somebody has done wrong?
Yes, when it's brought to our department's attention, we would bring it to the attention of the elected board and the executive officers that there is a perceived conflict of interest and that they need to address it.
Right. And if someone you think violated a conflict of interest, like they did something informally, like they maybe steered something to their a contract or some matter there, what would you do?
Again, our role is largely advisory.
I know, but what if you as a city official saw someone do something wrong? That's all I'm asking. What would you do?
I would meet with the board myself and say, this is a problem that you've got to come to.
If someone did something wrong, like they say they took money from the city that they're given and did something wrong with that, what would you do?
We would suspend their funding and investigate what actually went wrong.
But you'd refer to who?
Well, with the funding program, we have the jurisdiction to cut off funds.
Right.
And that's what we have done in the past.
But let me ask the city attorney then. If they did violate something, they would be referred to the police department, referred to the...
It depends on the law. If it's embezzlement or misuse of public funds, there have been occasions where those, I believe, have been referred to the Los Angeles Police Department.
Right. And all your staff has been briefed on that?
Yes.
That's what the point I was trying to get
Yes.
to.
We're
Thank
aware
you very
of that.
much. Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you. Mr. Cardenas is next.
Call for the question.
We just have Mr. Zine on the queue for a second time. Because he has not spoken for a second time, it would be a 10-member vote unless he takes himself off the queue.
I second that.
All right, he takes himself off the queue. Is there any objection? Well, that's the whole queue, so there's nobody else on the queue. All right, if there's no objection, that will end debate. We have before us items 10 and 11. First, we have 2 motions that are before us, items 10A and 10B. Are these accepted as friendly amendments? There's an objection, so those will be voted upon. We will do those in reverse order. Is that correct, Mr. Clerk? B and then A? Oh, there's a C? C has not been... Well, the previous question was called and C had not been circulated yet. So, is there an objection to... We would have to suspend the rules, otherwise the previous question's been called. Yeah. So C is not... Had this been stamped by the clerk when it was called? That's the operative. No, it has been stamped now, but when the previous question was called, had it been stamped? Hold on. We'll find out. Timing out.
So it's that or nothing. They're dealing with that or nothing.
C is being circulated. We'll wait a moment for C. We had it stamped before. Okay. It had not been assembled, but it was stamped. We obviously can't debate it, but we will hear its content, and we will have copies before us in a second. Yep.
Marks, I said I would like to have the Jill Barad, what's the word I'm looking for? Declaration, where I've taken the ethics training, I understand the state law that I'm under. If I have any conflict of interest, I recuse myself from this board action.
Is without any written.
If they take ethics training, they will.
It's not.
Yes, they will. You act like they're ignorant. They're not. They're smart.
Okay, we have C before us. Read it out. We have it before us, but for the public and others who may not have been able to see this, I think we will try to. It says, I move that the matter of the continued considerations of the committee report, et cetera, be required to A, participate in a mandatory ethics training through the Department of Neighborhood Empowerment, B, sign a declaration of financial disclosure similar to the attached. And there is an attached disclosure form. So anybody who does not have C before them right now? C, these are not I want to be clear with the council, these are not necessarily mutually exclusive. One does not prohibit the others. So one could, just as a point of...
No filling out of the form, but it does not get you out from under the state requirement.
Hold on, before we get into the merits or the content, it is clear what's before us, but I do want folks to know, though people who have introduced C and B may be voting separately, these are not mutually exclusive.
You have great disrespect for neighboring councils.
Is everybody clear on that? If you vote yes, if C passes, that does not mean that we don't vote on B. These are not mutually exclusive, okay? It's not been written in a way that would preclude that.
Okay.
All right, so we have C before us. Everybody clear what C is? Does anybody need a point of information on what C is? That's the only thing? Yes, Mr. Smith?
So we get the review correct. C would say they have to make a public declaration that they've taken the ethics training, they understand the law, and that there's a separate form. However,
there's no requirement of declaring you've taken the ethics training. It says to participate it, but it says nothing about a declaration of the ethics training, only to sign a declaration of financial disclosure.
No.
Folks, I will reread what C says. A, participate. Everybody listen up. Hold on. Listen up. A, participate in a mandatory ethics training through the Department of Neighborhood Empowerment. Just to participate. It says nothing else about whether you disclose that, whether anybody tracks that or not. Just to participate. B, sign a declaration of financial disclosure similar to the attached. Okay? That's all that C says.
Discover the existence of a conflict of interest, I will recuse myself from this board action.
President, I have a point of information.
Yes, point of information, Mr. Weiss.
A point of information for Ms. Hahn, who drafted C. Am I just not reading it? Do I not see? Is this a one-time deal, or is it an ongoing, yearly, annual training, annual re-signing of the thing? Is it something someone just...
I think once you sign it, you have said, it is my obligation if I discover a conflict of interest, monetary in kind, gifts, lobbyists, I will recuse myself and take no part in any discussion regarding this matter.
I was trying to make a suggestion that if it were, it gets a lot closer to B if it is an annual thing that
Fine.
other officials have
Fine.
to go.
Colleagues, since the question has been called, we cannot amend
fine.
C. C is before us as C. We only have points of information right now. It is before us just as it is. Period.
That's good.
Any other points of information or points of order? We have item C before us first. Okay? Everybody all right? No further questions? Please open the roll on C. Close the roll. Hold on. Keep it open. Okay. We'll move for an oral vote. Mr. Clerk, if you'll please conduct an oral vote on C.
Alarcon.
Oral vote.
Power to the people.
Cardenas.
No for disclosure.
Ms. Hahn.
Yes, power to the people.
Just yes or no, please.
Mr. Lavange.
Yes.
Mr. Parks.
No.
Perry.
I love Janice, but no.
Mr. Reyes.
No.
I love Janice too.
Mr.
No.
Rosendahl.
I love y'all. No.
Mr. Smith. Mr. Weiss.
Yes.
Mr. Zine.
Yes.
And President Garcetti.
Yes.
6-6.
That does not pass. Next, we have B before us. B. Next, colleagues, just a point of suggestion. Just a point of suggestion on this, and for the folks that are in the audience too. Introducing a motion that would address this with some of the things where we could debate that is not precluded by its failure today. So it sounds like people want to perhaps explore that further. It is not alive for today, but that does not mean it won't be addressed later. 10B is now before us. Let's try electronically one more time. Let's see if the buttons work. Now, please open the roll on B. Close the roll and tabulate the vote.
We have 8 ayes and 4 noes.
Okay, that passes. Now we have item 10A. Please open the roll. Close the roll and tabulate the vote.
8 ayes, 4 noes.
Okay, those are amended now. We have not passed anything yet. Those are just amendments. We now have the entire matter before us on item 10 as amended. Please open the roll. As amended now. These were amendments. A and B passed, C failed. Now the entire package. Please open the roll. Close the roll and tabulate the vote.
8 ayes, 4 noes.
Okay, that is approved.
And now, Mr. President, do you wish to take up item 11?
Yes, please. Item 11 is next. Colleagues, we still have item 11. We have item 11 before us. Okay, is everybody clear on item 11? Mr. City Clerk, why don't you detail what the item 11 is, the vote is?
This is the Education and Neighborhoods Committee report relative to the procedures and guidelines for submitting the neighborhood councils.
And the recommendation from the committee is?
Is to, 1, approve the submission process for neighborhood councils to initiate council files, including A, completing a neighborhood council file submission sheet and attaching documentation of the neighborhood council board action, the resolution or minutes, and B, filing the completed neighborhood council file submission sheet and attachments with the city clerk. 2, instruct the city clerk to create a neighborhood council file only and when all of the above required criteria have been verified, and refer the matter to the appropriate city council committee for consideration, consistent with established referral procedures. 3, instruct the Department of Neighborhood Empowerment to provide the training and resources to facilitate this activity as much as possible. And lastly, 4, instruct the city clerk, Dunn, and the Ethics Commission to report back in 6 months with a status report on the neighborhood council file pilot project.
Okay, if we can open the roll, please.
Excuse me, I need to.
Yes.
I need to make one clarification so
Madam
that
City
your
Attorney?
action on 11, if approved, would be consistent with your action on 10.
Correct.
And that would be to amend the Education Neighborhoods Report to add a 1C to read, documenting the filing of Form 54 by all board members on the Neighborhood Council file submission sheet, which form would be filed with the City Ethics Commission.
Okay.
For that reason, I'm going to be voting no on this.
Okay.
I'm going to be voting no. I'm for council files, but I'm against you having to fill things out, so I'll be voting no on this. I know you want to do that.
We will make that change to keep that consistent with 10, and that will affect people's votes accordingly. As has been discussed, please open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
9 ayes, 3 noes.
Okay, that is approved. Next item, please.
That now takes you to item 24, and there is an amending motion 24A that has been circulated.
Okay. Mr. Smith?
Or the 24 amendment just codifies just what we just did. So
Do you want to move to receive and file?
yeah, we can receive and file it. That's
Okay. First, we have cards from the public on this. Zuma Dog. Yes, Mr. Oh, he's done? Okay. Yes, Mr. Cardenas?
I'm sorry, point of clarification, Mr. Smith. Your 24A says, item 2, require neighborhood council board members to file a modified Form 52. But haven't we formally called the modified form?
It deletes that, which we already did.
Yeah, but haven't we? Oh, it deletes that paragraph? Okay.
Deleted 52, which is what they just said.
Yeah, but didn't we formally call that new Form 54? Okay. Got it. Got it. Thank you.
So for clarification, the motion is to receive and file this motion.
We still have item 1, which is part of 24. In the meantime, we have Cindy Cleghorn on item 24, and then Barbara Monahan-Burke.
We just wanted to receive and file my 24A.
Right, correct. Just the motion. Ms. Cleghorn.
I just wanted to, on this particular item, to remove the financial disclosure requirement, but it appears to me that you've already voted in 10 and 11 that you're going to have some form of financial disclosure. So I guess it's, moot. I don't know. So if you could clarify, that would be helpful.
Okay, we will do that. Barbara Monahan-Burke.
Barbara Monahan-Burke, Studio City Neighborhood Council Board and Government Affairs Committee co-chair. Again, I totally disagree on any financial form. Given that we're neighborhood councils, we are advisory. You are going to lose very, very many talented board members. And I think this is really what you're doing here is a vote against neighborhood councils. Really not acceptable. Thank you.
Thank you. Lydia Grant is our next speaker.
Yes, I'm Lydia Grant, Sunland Tongue Neighborhood Council, volunteer board member. And I think that that's something really important to remember. Mr. Smith was talking about a level playing field. Unfortunately, to the neighborhood councils, it would appear as if you're creating a battlefield. Because the fact is the level, there's never going to be a level playing field. If we wanted to be city council people, we would run for those offices. What we're asking is to be able to share an idea. And the way that 24 is written is, like I said before, it's not friendly. If you look at it, one says the words are mandatory, repercussions, consequences, non-compliance. What kind of friendly environment is that to create a team with, to work together? Again, I have to reiterate, we're trying to work together, and it seems as if we're, again, trying to jump hurdles. Thank you.
Thank you. Nina Royal is our last speaker.
I'm Nina Royal, and I'm speaking for myself. I think it's outrageous. The neighborhood councils were formed in order to give people a voice. And by requiring them to fill out these financial forms when they're strictly advisory, you've even said right here that they are not legislative. All they want to do is put a simple file in front of the city council and be able to track its progress. This is just absolutely ludicrous. The reason why the city council, or I should say the neighborhood councils, were formed to begin with was to stop secession, valley secession, because people were not getting a voice. And now it seems like you're kind of like going around the mountain, so to speak, to keep us from having it. I know of people personally that are affluent that will not work on neighborhood councils, even though they're very knowledgeable and have a lot to offer, because they don't want to disclose all this stuff that this is calling for. Shame on the city council.
That will close our general public comment. Any members wishing to be heard on this item? Mr. Smith?
The confusion was we need 24A needs to go for us. I withdraw my motion to receive and file that because we're removing section 2, which used item form 52. So we still want item recommendation number 1, which was on ethics training. So we'll continue with ethics training, remove item number 2 because it dealt with form 52, which is no longer relevant.
Okay. Is there an objection to the amendment? There's no objection to the amendment. That will be accepted as a friendly amendment. Please open the roll. Is everybody in their seats who wants to be? Okay, please open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
10 ayes, 1 no.
Okay, that is approved. Next item, please.
Mr. President, there is a special 2, and the city attorney will speak to the findings.
Okay, Mr. City Attorney on the findings.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll recite the facts as presented to me by the maker of the motion for the Council's consideration of the adequacy of the findings. Since the posting of today's agenda, the state and county have notified the city of the need that the Department of Building and Safety be declared as the lead agency in order to abate hazards at the Oak Ridge Mobile Home Park stemming from the federally declared disaster area in Sylmar. There is an immediate need to act to remove the debris as soon as possible and to secure FEMA funding. Council must first make findings pursuant to Government Code Section 54954.2 before considering the substantive motion.
All right, on the findings? If not, let's go. We'll open the roll on the findings, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
11 ayes.
That is approved. On the substance, Mr. Alarcon.
Council members, as you are well aware, 2 months ago we had a most devastating fire that destroyed 500 homes in the 7th Council District, approximately 500 homes. The complexity of the situation has developed relative to the debris removal process because we have a mobile home park with 480 some homes destroyed where the owners are responsible for the debris removal, but the landowner is only responsible for cleanup of the common areas, which would mean that all the different parties would have to come together all at once to decide how to remove the debris. To make a long story short, this has become a very complicated matter that has strained the folks at FEMA, at the State of California OES, the County Health Department, the State of California Housing Department, which has the primary responsibility for this. And so this motion would have the city step forward and take the lead on the debris removal process. Now, what that specifically means is that we will clean up the site. And I should mention this is in cooperation with all those folks that I mentioned and the mayor's office who has helped us put this motion together. It would essentially allow us also, you have taken actions to put money in place. $500,000 from the CRA has been dedicated for this process. $1.73 million in community development block grant funds has been allocated, or the authority to spend up to that much has been set aside for the purpose of debris removal. This essentially allows us to put the money forward. At the same time, it puts us in lead agency status, which allows us to apply for reimbursement, up to 75% at the federal level, FEMA, and up to 18.75% at the state level. So this motion will save time, most importantly, for the homeowners. It should theoretically allow them to come to quick agreement on the debris removal and have our city contractor move forward to clean up the property and begin the process of rebuilding. The one point that is most difficult in this process is that these owners, even if they have insurance, and most of them do, only have living expenses covered till approximately July. We're not going to be able to rebuild this project before July, and so the bottom line is that we will have 500 homeless families on our hands come July. This expedites the cleanup process and therefore will expedite the opportunities for us to redevelop the site and get these families back into their homes. So I urge your support. I thank you for your cooperation and your unanimous support on previous actions. This is an unusual situation. Even amongst disasters, this is an unusual effort. I want to thank Building and Safety for stepping forward and all the other departments, especially the City Attorney's Office, which had representatives in every department weigh in on this motion, and the Mayor's Office for agreeing to allow us to put ourselves front and center to help clean up this site. And with that, I would urge your aye vote.
Thank you, Mr. Parks.
Mr. President, I just would like to have one question. I certainly agree with the philosophy of the motion, but one of the things I'd like to find out if we've done any analysis, determine if there's any financial impact on the city in putting themselves in that position and what impact it may have on the general fund, and if we have that information now. And I just throw that and ask Richard if...
Our anticipation is that there won't be any financial impact. Number one, 75% would be reimbursed by FEMA, and all this is theoretical, so we're hoping that is the case. And then 18.75% would be reimbursed by the state. That would be a total of 93.75%. The $500,000 that is coming out of AB 1290 money for my CRA project would not, even if it weren't reimbursable, it would cover at least the 6.25% that remains. So theoretically, we have covered all the money that would be allocated for a project that is estimated to cost somewhere between $4 and $7 million.
I would just ask that, again, with all those numbers, that we put some guidance in the motion that if these percentages or dollar figures do not come forward to the city, that we not use the general fund as basically to cover those costs.
I would actually insert a friendly amendment, since I'm the maker of the motion. It would be friendly, and that is to report to Budget and Finance simply on the status of the expenditures and the reimbursement process within 30 days of today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that'll be our last speaker then. Go ahead and please, if that's accepted as friendly, open the roll, close the roll, and tabulate the vote.
11 ayes.
That is approved. Next order of business.
Council has motions for posting and referral.
Those are posted and referred.
There are excuses on the desk. Councilmember Weezer, request to be excused Tuesday, January 27th, to leave at noon for city business. That meets council policy.
All right, he's excused.
And Councilmember Rosendahl, request to be excused Friday, February 6th, for personal business. That meets council policy.
Okay, he's excused.
That clears desk.
All righty. Any announcements, folks? Yes, Mrs. Perry?
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. I have two announcements. Number one, I want to invite all my colleagues in the entire city of Los Angeles to the Nokia Plaza at LA Live on Tuesday, January the 20th, 2009 at 7 a.m. in the morning for the pre-ceremony events, and at 9 a.m. to witness the inauguration of Barack Obama as he takes his oath of office, and then 10 a.m. post-ceremony coverage and entertainment, and then 11:30 for the inaugural parade. That will be at the Nokia Plaza outdoor. Everyone is welcome. And I extend an invitation to anyone who's listening or watching, and also to you, Mr. President, and I'll bring this to you on behalf of all of us, this beautiful commemorative
Thank you.
resolution.
Suitable for framing. Thank you very much.
To commemorate your wedding.
It'll be a family heirloom. Thank you. Any other announcements? Yes, Mr. Parks?
Yes, I'd just like to remind the public, January 19th, the MLK parade, basically going down King Boulevard from Western to Crenshaw, south on Crenshaw to Leimert Park. And after that parade, there will be an all-day festival in the park, co-hosted by the 8th District and KGLH Radio.
Thank you very much. Any other announcements?
Yeah, thank you.
If not, do we have any adjourning motions today? If I could ask everybody in council chambers to please rise for our adjourning motions. We'll begin with Mr. Alarcon.
Council members, I would ask that we adjourn in the memory of Abraham Guerrero. He was 22 years old and was shot and killed in Pacoima. On Sunday, December 28th, 2008, at about 2 a.m., he was outside his home saying goodbye to friends on leave from military duty in Iraq when an unknown suspect in a vehicle approached and shot and killed Abraham, an innocent victim. Abraham and his family have been lifelong Council District 7 residents, and during his 22 years, he enjoyed his family's school and was extremely invested in police work. At the age of 14, Abraham became an LAPD Foothill Division explorer, and according to Captain Ivan Menzel, his death has affected LAPD Foothill, as Abraham is remembered as an explorer that was a strong leader and self-starter that always showed initiative. At the age of 19, he started working for Golden West K-9 Company in Pacoima as a supervisor and maintained that job until his death. Abraham last year began exploring his next step in police work, which led him to begin the application process to become an LA sheriff. Abraham's dream was to buy a big house for his mom, and during his spare time, Abraham enjoyed watching football, going bowling with friends. But the true love of his life was his family. Abraham has 3 brothers and 3 sisters that he adored and adored him right back. His mom, Maria, describes her son Abraham as happy, playful, and helpful. Abraham Guerrero loved his family, community, and this city, and he will be dearly missed. The services were this past Monday, January 5th, at San Fernando Mission Mortuary and Cemetery in Mission Hills. He is survived by Maria Negrete, Arturo Negrete, Victor Guerrero, Ruby Guerrero, Andres Guerrero, Jasmine Negrete, Adrian Negrete, and Rosa Negrete. I have introduced a reward motion that we will take up on Friday because we believe there is information in the community that might lead to the arrest and conviction of his killer.
Thank you, Mr. Alarcon. Other adjourning motions, Ms. Hahn?
Thank you. I'd like to adjourn our meeting today in the memory of Nunzio Blue Jay Bologna, who was a fixture in the San Pedro community, who passed away on New Year's Day, apparently right after midnight. He was only 66 years old. He was born in San Pedro. He attended the 15th Street Elementary School, Dana Middle School, San Pedro High School, and as a teenager, he counted himself proudly among the Mudslingers Social Club of San Pedro's cruising area. He was an active member of our community who had his own architectural drafting firm in San Pedro, and he later worked for Overton Moore Associates for 23 years. His work has gone into a wide variety of buildings in San Pedro and surrounding areas, from commercial projects to residential and industrial developments. He leaves behind his beloved wife, Joanne, and according to the obituary in the paper, they never spent a night away from each other. His sons, Sean and Brian, 4 grandchildren, and well as his brother, Leo, who I know very well. Leo and his wife, Jackie, were actually neighbors of mine. And his sisters, Phyllis and Rosie is also a very good friend of mine as well. And many nieces and nephews. I think it was a sudden passing. The family was very sad, but he certainly has left his mark in San Pedro, and he will be greatly missed, but his legacy will remain in many of the architectural structures that he designed.
Thank you. Mr. LaBonge.
Members, we adjourn in memory of Kathleen Amundsen, the wife of the late, great Rob Amundsen, who was the great supporter of many things in our city. She grew up in the Los Angeles area, went to LA High School, as well as UCLA, and earned a degree in art history, and was very involved with the county art facilities, including starting the Docent Council at the Los Angeles County Museum of Art, and similar work at the Armand Hammer Museum of Art. She's survived by 3 children, Karen, Robert, and William. Kathleen Amundsen. Also, I'd like to ask you to adjourn in memory of Don Callender, who sold his mother's pies, thus helping make Marie Callender's a household name. Don grew up in Long Beach, and a family converted an old Quonset hut to their first restaurant. He's survived by his wife Kathy, sons Lucky, Glenn, and daughters Kathy Spunk.
Thank you very much. Ms. Perry.
Quick adjourning motions. The first for Mr. Sig Kagagawa. He passed away on January 4th, 2009. He was a hero to his family, an admired friend, and a very well-respected individual, longtime community leader and philanthropist whose dedication and service is commendable and greatly appreciated. He was the father of Stephen Kagawa. I'm sorry, I mispronounced his name, Kagawa, Chief Executive Officer of Pacific Bridges Companies and a respected colleague. Mr. Kagawa is survived by a host of family and friends, and all of whom knew him will miss him dearly. I'd also like to adjourn in memory of Gwendolyn Coleman, who passed away January 7th after being involved in a fatal accident earlier that morning. She was a dedicated co-worker at Manufacturers Bank and started her 20-year career with Mitsui Manufacturers Bank in 1988, working at their headquarter branch office and supporting their commercial loan officers. She was an outstanding performer. She went from assistant cashier to administrative assistant to head of the headquarters branch as a branch manager, and continued to support incoming headquarters branch managers. And in 1999, she became an administrative assistant supporting the chief credit officer and his credit officers in the various credit unions. She was a wonderful friend, a great co-worker, a loving mother, a compassionate daughter, caring sister and grandmother, and a firm believer in her faith, and her funeral arrangements are pending.
Thank you, Mr. Rosendahl.
Thank you, Mr. President. William Vaughn, a litigation specialist for 4 decades at O'Melveny and Myers, whose courtroom victories included defending former CBS anchor Dan Rather against slander charges stemming from a 60-Minute report, died January 3rd at his Pacific Palisades home. He was 78. Vaughn had cancer and other ailments, according to Warren Christopher, our former Secretary of State in the Clinton administration, who said that Bill was a mentor to a generation of adversarial lawyers. He was an inspiration for a lot of folks. He was born in Los Angeles on August 29, 1930. He earned a bachelor's degree from Stanford in 1952, studied law at UCLA, where he was an associate editor of the Law Review. He earned his law degree in 1955 and joined the O'Melveny and Meyer firm the same year. After serving in the Army from 1956 to 1957, he returned to the firm and became a partner in 1964. He retired in 2002. His wife Claire is survived, and sons Gregory, Tony, and Jimmy, daughters Liz and Christy, brothers Dennis, and 9 grandchildren. May he rest in peace.
Thank you. Mr. Alarcon.
Yes, I would also like to ask that we adjourn in memory of John Fairweather of Sylmar. He was 97 years old when he passed away on January 1st, 2009. He was born in Ogden, Utah, and was a veteran with the Army, having fought in World War II. When he came out of the Army, he opened a canteen at the Veterans Administration office on Sepulveda Boulevard. He and his wife, June, purchased a motel in San Luis Obispo. When they retired, they moved to Sylmar to be near their daughter. They're survived by their daughter, Barbara, and their son, John. The services, I'm sorry, I'm having a tough time reading the notes here. No services will be held. After cremation, he will be buried at Mount Oliver Cemetery in Salt Lake City, Utah.
Thank you. And if that's the last adjourning motion, Mr. Clerk, please call the roll. We'll next be in session tomorrow. That will be January 14th, 2009. In the meantime, have a good day. This meeting of the Los Angeles City Council is adjourned.